Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This is going to be the astro weather for the week of January 25th through February the 1st, 2025. Excited to be back. Happy Sunday to all of you guys who are watching and my Sunday crew. In this video, we're going to be diving into what the themes are for the week ahead. We're going to take a look at all the major transits and what's going on with the moon. And we're going to be really touching on Neptune returning back into the sign of Aries. So this is going to be quite a impactful week. Obviously, Neptune is making its mark with its bold ingress back into the cardinal fire sign of Aries, likely stirring up collective dreams, making them real, turning them into action amid some very intense lunar and Mars-Pluto energies this week. Now, a few quick love notes before we get into the video. Please do like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video and click the bell button below so you can get alerts to when more of my videos are coming out on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays, where I use tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. It truly helps the channel grow, so I appreciate that. And drop your rising sign below. Let me know how you're feeling with these energies this week. Leave me a comment and let me know what you're experiencing. I really appreciate that. I try to get back to all of you guys, but I do read all of them. We're also going to be going live on the channel on Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time. So that's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be doing live readings, astrology readings on the channel, talking about this up and coming full moon that's going to be happening in Leo, where I'm answering your questions live in real time. It's always a good time on Friday, so come hang out. And also, for those of you guys who have not already seen it, the February 2026 horoscopes for the 12 rising signs are out. So if you guys want to see what February has in store, including the solar eclipse that we're going to see in Aquarius, the Mercury retrograde that's going to be taking place later in February in Pisces, and all the important transits in between, make sure you listen for your rising sign. I hope you guys enjoy that. And I am going to be kicking off my Astro 301 this week. I'm back after several years of not teaching. It's going to be my advanced techniques in astrology, where we're going to be doing 8 weeks of live instruction on Zoom. So if you guys are seeing this on Sunday, you want to get in, this is your last chance. Click the links below if you want to join the class. Really excited for that. You guys can see the kind of breakdown of the weekly overview of what we're going to be teaching, and hopefully helping you guys feel like you're confident and able to be proficient as a working astrologer by the end of the program. All right, so let's talk about the weekly vibe. Obviously, this week is carrying a potent mix of initiation as well as intensity. So this is thanks to Neptune entering back into the sign of Aries. This will be taking place on January the 26th. And this is kicking off a new era of pioneering spirituality and obviously idealistic actions. Now, the moon's journey from fiery Aries on Sunday all the way into Taurus, and then we're going to be seeing some Gemini moon kind of action, which is more innovative. And then we're going to be watching the moon go through Cancer, which is going to be a little bit more emotional and sentimental. And then by the end of the week, we are building into what's going to be this full moon in Leo. So lots of emotional momentum. We're going to see culminations with that full moon on February the 1st, which is obviously loud and dramatic, and the week ends with a bit of a roar. Now, the key transits that we're going to be talking about are going to be really focusing on the Mars-Pluto conjunction. I think that's going to be a biggie. By the time you guys are watching this on Sunday, you're already starting to feel the conjunction that's building. And this is going to amplify power struggles or transformation, as well as breakthroughs for the collective. It is possible, because it is going to be happening at a 3, that there can be some very explosive conversations. There can also be some warlike energy that's kind of out in kind of the ethers. You're going to see that people's words are going to be used as weapons, and we're also going to see some kind of power struggles and some standoffs that are going to be happening. You want to be very careful when it comes to driving over the next couple of days with this conjunction. Aquarius is a sign that's traditionally associated with Saturn, so there's no surprise that we're seeing very icy conditions, at least in parts of the kind of northern United States. So be mindful while you guys are driving, because that could lead to some potentially dangerous situations. Mars can be about speed, it can be about things kind of combusting, and Pluto can obviously lead to some situations where obviously things can be deadly. So take your time, don't be rushing while you're getting around, especially pretty much Sunday all the way through about Wednesday of this week. Now we're also going to see that there will be a first quarter moon in Taurus. So this is going to kind of represent that crisis in action happening on the 25th. And this is where the moon is going to be making a square to the sun in Aquarius. And this is kind of the midway point from the most recent new moon that we had building into the full moon in Leo on Sunday. So this is pushing us for practical progress. We're also going to see tension that's kind of happening when it comes to banking, resources, potentially even the market. And with some of the squares to planets in Aquarius, not just the sun, but also Mars and Pluto, there are going to be some standoffs. So overall, the vibe of this week is really about bold new beginnings, and it's laced with a whole lot of tension. So I would be expecting some major revelations, potentially in identity, maybe major innovation, and new kind of collective ideas. You really want to navigate this week by grounding your dreams in action, but watch for the illusions or the conflicts. It's a time to assert our vision, but it's not about forcing particular outcomes. Now, for those of you guys who have not seen some of my other videos, there is a ton of information about Neptune in Aries on my channel. We actually saw Neptune in Aries last summer, so it did make that ingress with Saturn, and it stayed until about October. So there are Neptune in Aries videos that I've put out. We also talk about that in the 2026 New Year's presentation, and there's all kinds of stuff that's peppered in. So if you want to see more about that, definitely check some of those older videos out. They're oldies, but they're goodies, and I go really deep into kind of talking about some of the themes of this particular transit. So on to Neptune entering Aries. So basically, you're going to see Neptune enter the sign on the 26th, and it's going to stay in Aries until the spring of 2038. Now, I'm not going to be going through the whole kind of span of that. I'm really only going to be taking you guys up until Neptune's retrograde. And I'll be talking about some of the more pivotal kind of turning points with Neptune in Aries over the next several months. If you guys stay tuned to the end of the video, I'll take you through the 12 rising signs and give you guys some insight on what Neptune in Aries means, what the transit might be bringing, and what you want to focus on. So for this transit, obviously, you know, if we kind of go back in time and we think about what was happening in 2025, my mind goes back to March of 2025. We saw Neptune enter into Aries around March the 30th, and it stayed until it was retrograding back towards Pisces, and it started its retrograde on July 4th of 2025. So pretty much from the end of March all the way into mid-October, Neptune was in that sign. So we already had a little bit of an experience with that. I kind of look at it as a little bit of like a teaser of kind of seeing what that energy was going to look like as it was getting into Aries again in 2026. So you guys might have to think about what happened. Certainly March and April was it was a lot. We had like a Venus retrograde that went from Aries to Pisces. We saw Mercury retrograde in Aries. We saw eclipses. And then we saw this ingress, and it was all happening over that 0 degrees Aries point. So some of the things that were taking place in our lives and also out in the world is now kind of coming back up again. So think about what was taking place then. But as for who this is going to impact the most, if you happen to have any Aries placements, a sun, moon, rising, or personal planet within about 0 to 5 degrees of Aries, this is going to be impacting you the most. Now, Neptune's going to get all the way up to about 4, almost 5 degrees this year. So you will be feeling the Neptune transit if you have Aries planets around those degrees all year long. This is also going to be impacting my Pisces risings, as Neptune is your guys' modern day ruler. So you're definitely going to want to pay attention to what's kind of happening with some of the Neptune aspects. And if you happen to have anything in the cardinal signs between 0 and 5 degrees, you're going to be under a Neptune opposition or square. So my Cancers, my Libras, and my Capricorns, you guys will be feeling the effects of this as well. If you happen to have any planets in the early degrees of the mutable signs, you may also start to finally feel a shift where like Neptune is kind of breaking out of where it's been in squares, and now it's going to start coming into some trines with you guys. So obviously Virgo and Gemini and Sag, you guys are going to get a little bit of a reprieve from what's been a very long Neptune transit. Now, Neptune in astrology, it is a modern planet. So we do look at this from the perspective of the modern day rulership of Pisces. It rules over things like dreams as well as illusions. What we're seeing kind of when we're meditating, our visions, it's about spirituality. It also has a strong tie to religion as well as intuition. But there's a darker side of Neptune. Neptune deals with escapism. It can be where we're overextending ourselves or sometimes where we're a little weak. It does, I guess, have positive attributes, and it's known for being more compassionate. And it connects to things that kind of flow. So water, oceans, it's also connected to film and art, as well as drugs and psychedelics. It does have connections to prisons and also anything that deals with hospitals or institutions. And it is connected to hidden spaces and things that are kind of behind the scenes. And it has this connection on our collective unconsciousness. It's really known for kind of dissolving boundaries, and it's really about inspiring transcendence, but it has a tendency to kick up when it first changes signs and bring up a lot of confusion or deception. It doesn't really matter what sign it's in, you're going to see some of those themes. So if we think about what's happened the last couple of years of having Neptune in Pisces, it's been in its home sign, it's been very emotional, very sensitive, but it's also been overextending itself a little bit. There's been this sense of people being maybe a little idealistic and kind of either just assuming that, you know, everything's gonna fall into place, we just have to pray, we just have to meditate, we just have to visualize, you know, and everything's gonna be like kumbaya. And now when it shifts into Aries, which is cardinal fire, now it's going to be literally like manifest destiny. It's like you're going to have to make your dreams a reality. You're going to have to step up. So for a lot of people, it's going to be less about waiting and receiving. For others, it's going to be more about being open and kind of rising to the occasion, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and being like, I'm going to go and make this dream real. I think thankfully Saturn will be there to kind of help strengthen that, but it could be a very harsh reality check for a lot of people because Aries is what's in your face, right? So now we're going to start to kind of look at, okay, have we been kind of conditioned, or have we assumed, or have we just kind of gone along with what is right or what is caring or what is compassionate? And now we're starting to see the effects potentially of having lack of boundaries or not being aware of what we're watching, right? What we're drinking, what we're absorbing from the collective. And we start to see kind of the heavier energies of how that's just impacting us on an individual level. Now, Neptune in mundane astrology, obviously it has connections to collective ideals. It's also about spiritual movements. It has a strong tie to oil and gas industries, and it's also notorious for pandemics. It does rule over film and entertainment, maritime affairs, anything that deals with ships, boats, the Navy, and global compassion or delusion. Now, it influences societal escapism, like through media, you know, drugs, substances, sleep, right, doom scrolling, all of that stuff. So what we're going to find is that now that's going to be a thing of the past. We're going to start to recognize and realize that we're actually only fooling ourselves, and we're delaying things, and we're kind of self-sabotaging if we're allowing some of this stuff to continue. And for many of us, we may feel like, oh my gosh, I better sleep at the wheel in this area of my life, and like now it's right in my face, and I have to really see those red flags, and I have to do something about it. So my recommendation for you guys is you don't have to have a plan quite yet. Neptune's going to spend a great amount of time in this sign. We're also going to see Saturn kind of moving through some conjunctions over the next couple of months with Saturn. And I think really it's just about showing up. It's about doing your best. You don't have to be perfect. You can cut yourself a little bit of slack, but you do have to be on the up and up when it comes to belief in yourself. And I think that that's really the takeaway when we think about Aries energy. Aries is the body, right? Aries is also man. So when we see Neptune go into the sign, it's very rare and very unusual, some of the aspects we're going to see over the next couple of months. It does kind of act as a marker for this opening in collective consciousness. And I think a lot of us are going to realize that our body is a temple. And if it's a temple, part of actually fine-tuning it and staying in this higher vibrational frequency means we have to move. We have to move our body. We have to really get our hands dirty and be willing to do the necessary kind of actions, and also practice a sense of being more assertive, being more direct. And we can do this in a compassionate way. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be combative. It can mean we're recognizing that we need to have necessary boundaries, see things clearly, and believe in ourselves to make things happen. So it depends on your chart. Obviously, if you have anything like 0 to 5 degrees, of Leo or Sag. You're going to be receiving trines. So it's going to be inspiring. It's going to be creative. If you have anything that's going to be like Gemini or Aquarius, it's going to be making sextiles to you guys. So it's going to be pretty friendly, and you're going to be able to have some kind of like helpful inspiration. The water signs definitely may have a little bit more of a difficult time with this, because it is going to kind of signify for you that there is a change that you're kind of opening up to, and you're having to channel more of that fire element. And it's very different than what's intuitive and emotional. It's about listening to your intuition and then taking action. So like I said, I'll go through all of that, but Neptune, when it's in a conjunction, will dissolve things, and likely Saturn's going to come through and it's going to strengthen this new beginning. If you're experiencing squares, so if you happen to have planets, like I said, in 0 to about 5 degrees of the cardinal signs, whether it's a square or it's an opposition, there is almost something that is being kind of dissolved, and it still seems a little fuzzy, or it seems a little like you're unsure about it. So this is where it pays to really know your chart. Pull your chart out so you can take a look and see if you have anything within that 0 to 5 degrees of the fire signs, the air signs, the water signs, so you can start to see where it's going to be kind of activating things in your chart. Now, Aries in general, right? Cardinal fire. So it's ruled by Mars. This is the me first, I'm, striking the match, I'm getting up, I'm doing things type of energy. And it's very bold. This is an energy that's about initiating something and self-identity. It's about action, courage, independence. And this is a sign archetypally that's associated with war, because Mars in Aries is kind of the gods of war. Now, it's known for being pioneering, so I think we're going to see a lot of inspired, new artists coming online. We're going to see a lot of people taking up also getting more involved in religion or spirituality, or redefining what that means in their lives. And you just have to remember, Aries, regardless of where it is in the chart, it's your relationship to that thing. So it doesn't have to be your first house if you're an Aries rising. It could be your 10th house, and it's your relationship and how you show up when it comes to your vision for your career reputation, or your 4th house, how you show up for your home, and where you learn to kind of embody the meaning of what home is. Yes, for some of us, this is going to represent things dissolving, but that dissolving is necessary for Saturn to come in and build these new structures. Now, Neptune and Aries themes, what you're going to see is that it's going to be blending the themes of fire and water, right? Because we've got a fire element, we've got a water kind of planet, something that's kind of nebulous and foggy, stormy, right? So we'll see that this can definitely bring a little bit of like disillusion with Aries kind of fiery drive. It's going to create what I believe to be our spiritual warriors, okay? So archetypally, maybe idealistic pioneers, right? Maybe entrepreneurs, maybe people who are learning to finally paint or write music, or people who are deciding they want to launch like their own film studios. And the themes are really going to include, at first, this kind of blurred self-identity. It's like, well, where do I go? How do I start? I'm in uncharted territory. And it will lead to inspired actions that will eventually bring freedom. There is major potential for delusions when it comes to ego, as well as aggression. And it's really about transcending the self through bold visionary pursuits. So it's kind of like the crusades for justice, right? I could see it being that. I could also see that this is about artistic innovations, or potentially confusing conflicts where ideals clash with reality. Now, historically, if we look back in time and we see the last couple of cycles where we had Neptune and Aries, the last cycle was from 1861 to 1875. Now, this was a time of upheaval and breakthroughs, right? So we saw the American Civil War that was taking place from 1861 to 1865. It was kicking off right around the time that Neptune was leaving Pisces and going into Aries. Obviously, there was a multitude of things that were connected to the Civil War, but I do think about how Neptune does deal with people who are isolated, people who are separated. And obviously, we know one of the big themes that was connected to the Civil War was, the states' rights and the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. We saw, the abolition that took place, and the 13th Amendment, which happened in 1865. In other parts of the world, we saw in 1866 the Austro-Prussian War, which completely reshaped Europe. So it's going to cover a multitude of different things in the future, but we'll see similarities that will kind of happen, where there is people who are willing to go to war for their cultural beliefs, for their spiritual beliefs. And Neptune wants to unify usually, right? It wants to kind of dissolve all the boundaries and bring people together. But it always starts with a little bit of conflict. And eventually, we start to see where two opposing sides actually start to kind of realize we need to come together and we need to be one, especially, for the human race. Now, also in the 1860s, in 1866, we saw the transatlantic cable, which connected continents. We were able to now communicate and connect internationally for the first time. So that was that connection to the world. We saw a major rise in religious and spiritual movements. Actually, this is when the spiritualist movement started, where you started seeing the Fox sisters who were talking about communicating with spirits, and they were hearing the knocks that were happening in the cabin. Then that led to table tipping, and we started seeing people getting into divination and spiritualism, and we were starting to see some of the beliefs that were coming from the East with like esoteric beliefs that was starting to be brought into the West. People were starting to kind of question the church, and they were really willing to explore really the depths of spiritualism and that connection with the other side. And it was in action, right? Pisces is not active, it's more receptive. So it's more go to church, receive, the information, talking to the congregation, the connection that you have with this kind of being that we don't see. But in Aries, it became more, channeling and mediumship and the opportunity and the abilities to kind of actually physically see psychic phenomena that could start to kind of happen. So one of my favorite topics, I could go on and on about that. But I think that, it was interesting because I also know that in around the 1870s, the Vatican Council declared that there was palpable infidelity, and so they were basically making decisions regarding what the popes could say or what they could not say and how they were going to be kind of governing. And then that also started restructuring obviously the Catholic Church. Now we saw major medical breakthroughs that also happened in the 1860s. We saw Louis Pasteur's germ theory, which obviously because of that research developed into major advancements in hygiene. Wash your hands, brush your teeth, clean counters. There could be things that could be cross-contaminated. And then also learning about, contamination and germs and infectious diseases, which then led to developments of vaccines. So back in the 1860s, around 1862, we saw the unification, of Italy and Germany. We saw also the Homestead Act that happened on the frontier expansion here in the United States, which ultimately materialized as major native displacement. Now, the NRA was founded in 1871, and this was obviously the National Association, the National Rifle Association, and it was for gun rights amid freedom ideals that were taking place while Neptune was in Aries. And in earlier cycles, in the 1697 to 1710, we saw wars like the Spanish Succession and obviously major leaps that happened in science. We saw Newton's optics. So if you guys want to see more about that stuff, go watch my 2026 point where I talk about the Saturn-Neptune ingress. But I talk about why these cycles are so unusual and that it's all about to be new groundbreaking beliefs and changes when it comes to not just the world, but also, I think, spirituality. As for what this transit feels like, well, the good news is we already got a sample of it, right? So we saw last year where it was Brave New World, things were changing. We started seeing complete rearrangement of, I think, global powers. And a lot of that is because Saturn was there as well. And I think with at least in my experience, I feel like Neptune having been in Aries, it still feels etheric, but it's urgent. It's we need to dissolve this now. We need to get clarity about this now. Or, we start seeing more rapid kind of questioning of Neptunian things. So it's going to feel like a fog is burning off, right? And that it's kind of lifting and it's revealing this call to action in a certain area of our life. So you may feel more inspired to chase dreams in a warrior-like way. Maybe there's a little bit more zeal. But boundaries can be kind of confused. It can lead to identity crises, especially in individuals, and obviously misguided kind of heroicism. Now, compassion meets courage, I think, with Neptune in this sign. We will see that there's illusions about self or others that are going to really dissolve through bold steps. And if we think about Pisces, because it's more passive and it's more unifying and it's just bring everything together, and Aries is going to be do I want to be a part of that? Am I a part of that belief system? Am I a part of that, religion? Am I a part of that identity? And Saturn coming in is going to make a lot of people go, no, I reject that, strongly. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm not going in that direction. And you're going to start seeing people that are going to be less consumed with just going along with things because they want everybody to kind of get along. They're going to be more willing to go their own way, and they're going to have to be a little bit more clear about what that way actually is. And so we're going to see tests for leaders. We're definitely going to see tests for individuals. I think it's going to be more in our face where, we're having some sabotaging kind of behaviors. Now, Mars will be the dispositor of Neptune while it's in Aries. So this will be, like I said, till 2038. So there's going to be quite some time to kind of watch the Mars transits. But in particular, there are some really colorful Mars transits that are kind of heating up right around the time that Neptune is going into Aries. And it's kicking off this week with Mars coming into conjunction with Pluto. So with Mars being the dispositor, it basically means that Mars is also signaling, to Neptune, hey, these are the things that are kind of getting worked out. And this is how it's going to be kind of either revealing or further confusing individuals. And it's going through right now Aquarius. So what we're going to find is that while it's going through Aquarius, it is more innovative. It's more future thinking. It's going to be more also about maybe focusing on goals. It's going to be about collective groups and kind of the action that's being taken by groups of individuals, and where groups are coming together and they're either going to kind of be blindly convincing individuals to get angry or have kind of this blind rage or madness and to be following like the stampeding herd. Or we're going to see it manifest in a higher kind of octave, and it's going to be more about what individuals are waking up to and where they're feeling inspired to actually unify and collaborate with like-minded people, and perhaps, come up with a solution so that way there can be more freedom, there can be more clarity, people can be more self-governed. So we'll see that there's going to be a lot of global innovations in spirituality and also in tech because it's in Aquarius when it starts. But also there will be power struggles if Mars is afflicted throughout these transits. So it starts off with a pretty afflicted transit, Mars-Pluto, where I think it's going to be a lot of, and we're seeing it. I don't know if you're like me, but I've been watching what's been going on, with the WEF and what's happening in Davos, where you see all these billionaires and world leaders and all these tech people and these like technocrats and people who are doomsaying about, what the future is going to be, and that the future is going to be this, that, and the other. And obviously Aquarius is the internet. So you're seeing a lot of people on the internet that are waking up and they're like, oh my God, this is like some dystopian stuff that they're talking about. And it's making people kind of realize or recognize, if we don't make a change, then we're going to land ourselves in some kind of self-limiting prison. That's what I would call Saturn and Neptune in Aries, to be honest with you. I think that, not to get political, but Saturn and Neptune in Pisces was a lot of everybody having been like kind of indoors, right? So we've seen that there's been a difficult kind of transition, I think, for a lot of people socially post-COVID, and people who are still afraid of, getting sick, people who are still feeling kind of isolated, or they've had so much dramatic change with their friendship groups or their families, that it's just easier to be alone. And so, especially with the North Node having been there recently, it's a lot easier for people to just kind of like become a recluse and hermit out, right? Some people have used that to their benefit, to really focus on spirituality and healing, or going back to church, or, some kind of mindfulness practice. And there's been a lot of kind of healing that's happened in the process of the last couple of years. But Pisces is kind of the cocoon phase. And so when planets come out of Pisces and they come into Aries, now it's like the dawn is kind of breaking and we're kind of coming back out into the world. But the dark side of Saturn and Neptune in Aries is that some people are still going to be afraid, and they're still going to feel limited, and they're still going to be like, oh, when is the sky going to come falling down, or what if this happens to me, or what if I don't have this? And that's more or less how this is being orchestrated. It's like putting down all of the bars and everything that's kind of keeping you confined and making you think that you're not free. But I've been saying this a lot over the last couple of years. I keep saying, like, yeah, the astrology looks grim, but, the human spirit is resilient. And I think that if we can wake up and kind of realize where one by one, there are all these little things that are being kind of decided and being chosen by groups. And this could be political groups. This could be billionaires that are sitting on panels in, some foreign country making decisions in Switzerland. If it's going to be, these mass movements that are pushing for forward motion to go too quick, too fast, too extreme, we're going to start to kind of realize that we're actually losing our freedoms. We're losing our identity. We're losing the ability to, speak for ourselves, to have certain rights. And this is where you're going to start to see just the energy from this week on just massively kick up. After Sunday, where we have that full moon, now we're 2 weeks away from a solar eclipse in Aquarius that we will see in mid-February, where all these planets are going to start coming into a square with Uranus, and things are going to rock, rattle, and roll. So yes, it can sound scary, but I feel like I, on one hand, would be very cautious against just getting involved blindly because you're angry about something and following the angry mob, because some people will do that. They will go, well, I feel like I've been, kind of cast out in society, or I've been, shunned, or I'm not fairly represented or recognized. And then we'll see a lot of extremists from particular groups, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's political affiliations, if it's going to be things that deal with gender or sexual identity, if it's going to be things that kind of connect to social civil rights, related things, humanitarian efforts. People will suddenly start getting absolutely crazy. And they're going to be like, well, I feel like I can't do anything on my own, so I'm just going to go and be a part of this because this is what's going to push the movement through. With Mars and Pluto, some of these things that are being literally thrusted upon, like collectives, are going to be very dangerous. And so this is where we have seen situations where we see people driving through markets or protests. We see that people are lashing out and saying things and making threats, and then we do see them being taken to the ground and being arrested. We also see that there could be some potentially really dangerous things that are being spoken about online, because Aquarius can represent where you're saying something online and you're making a threat, or you're running your mouth, or you're trying to kind of like engagement farm, and then suddenly there's like an FBI agent that shows up at your door. I mean, like literally, you'll see some of this stuff that's going to start happening. So I'm hopeful that if people are aware that some of the chaos and the confusion and the conflict is kind of intentionally being created to distract, right? Saturn and Neptune are going into Aries, to distract from individuals to be aware of what's going on, and there's this kind of chaos going on over here. Other things are getting kind of swept aside, and we're going to see there's going to still be potentially, at least until we're getting into the spring, a lot of things that literally just go right over our heads, right? Pun intended, Aries. Did you guys know that this last week in the House, there was legislation that was put forth for any vehicle from 2026 on, any new factory vehicle in the United States that will be implemented with technology or chips. So if for whatever reason, you're not allowed to drive your car, or if your car is like needing to be potentially impounded for not paying, a fine, or not paying your payments on your lease or on your loan. If for whatever reason there is a stay-at-home order, or if there is some mandate or decision that you can't, or people in your area can't go anywhere, your vehicle will be shut down. Did you guys know that? Mars can be things that go fast, right? Mercury deals with legislation, so does Jupiter, but Mercury is about this being debated. And then the Sun and Pluto coming into conjunction at a 3, and then Mars is going to hit at a 3. Aquarius literally deals with politicians, by the way. So it's about decisions that are being made. And before you get all angry and you get upset and you go, oh, it was probably this party or that party, one of the few people who were coming out and speaking out against it was Massey, and was like, look, I'm putting this proposal to stop this. And both parties unilaterally agreed to not allow that to happen. They were like, we're going to veto this. We're not going to allow you to put a block on this. We are going to be moving forward. That kind of stuff, guys. It's where there is going to be major limits to what you can say, what access you have to power, what access you have to the internet, what access you have to freedom. These are the kinds of things that are happening this week, and we will see more of it. And so I don't think a lot of people are really going to wake up until we're getting until about April, until we're getting also down the road later this year, when we see planets going through Leo opposing Pluto, or when we see planets going through Scorpio squaring Pluto. But people are going to have a rude awakening when they realize that there are things being put in motion to literally limit where you can do, what you can, how you can organize, and all that stuff. We're also seeing stuff that's going on right now where we're basically having Congress and the Department of War that is just making public statements recognizing, yes, we do have energy weapons. We have directed energy weapons. Pluto destroys, Mars is lasers, right? And then obviously that connection to Uranus is homes, property, land, agriculture, fires, things that could be destructive. So if there is some incentive to have power and control over land, over food, over agricultural spaces, farmland, to disrupt certain agriculture or resources, they're going to say it's going to be for defense, but is it? These are the kinds of things that worry me personally, you know? It's just, and I'm like Switzerland. I'm not going to get on one side or the other of the politics because I feel like choosing one side is kind of the illusion of choice. And so when you start to realize that it's less about what's going on with one party or the other, and you realize that it's more about a bunch of people who are lining their pockets basically and being paid to make decisions that I think are not actually going to be fairly representing at least the United States citizens, and that it's actually going to be a detriment to our food, resources, land, security, people are going to start waking up. So I want you guys to really pay attention because we are living in absolutely historic times. Some of the transits that are going to be happening over the next couple of months are going to be absolutely surreal. It will not be until about July that we're going to start to look around and go, oh my God, we've been absolutely mad. We've been crazy. All the things that have been kind of like blowing up. And then we're going to start to kind of reevaluate what has happened. As for the global events that I'm kind of expecting, you know, with Neptune going into Aries, definitely we're going to see this major revival. At least you hear that in a religious sense, right? Like the revival's happening and everybody's just kind of like backing at it. And there's going to be a lot of like, you know, religious kind of focus and enthusiasm and people now actively participating in religious or spiritual practices. Now, with that being said, you're going to start seeing a lot of preachers, a lot of people who are going to be spreading the word. You're going to start seeing a lot of cult leaders that are just going to be absolutely insane. It's going to make Charles Manson probably look like a walk in the park. We're also going to be seeing that there's going to be a lot of ideological movements. So there's going to be new religions, right? There's also going to be new activist groups that are going to be kind of popping up. I almost cried tears of joy when I was looking at a article the other day, and it was like a poll saying that most Gen Zers, which I believe is like kind of what the late 90s into like the mid 2000s. Most Gen Zers are voting and basically saying that they don't want to be affiliated with either political party. That they're like, nope, we want out. We want to vote out of this. And that's the kind of stuff that you're going to start seeing, I think, with some of these transits, is that people are going to realize that they don't really feel represented by their governing bodies. They don't feel fairly represented by a certain kind of political kind of movement or a political party. And they're going to go, I have a vision, I have a dream, I have an idea, and this is what I want to kind of run with. And we're going to see a lot of really amazing young people who are going to start getting involved, I think, in movements that are going to make things happen. They're going to take action, but it's not going to be something that's going to be combative or confrontational. It's going to be like, I have a dream and this is how I'm putting it into action. So it's going to be really, I think, inspiring to see. I think we are going to see a lot of more information that's coming up about the oceans, and whether that's ocean tech advancements like deep sea exploration. I do think we're going to have alien disclosure. I've been telling people this for years, and I do think that we're going to see that at some point this year. I also think that we're going to be hearing a lot more about secret military bases, right? Saturn-Neptune, and things that might be underwater or in coastal cities. And military bases in places that are quite cold, believe it or not, because, you know, Saturn's going to be in Aries too. This is also why you're going to be hearing that maybe some of the kind of green initiatives that we have been kind of discussing, kind of moving towards in recent years, that it may not be sustainable. And Aries is going to also be dealing with iron. It's going to deal with some metals. It's about factory workers. It's connected to manual labor jobs. And I think we're going to see a mass exodus actually from like collegiate kind of programs and people who have always been told, go to school, be a doctor, be a lawyer, you know, and not that there's anything wrong with those things, but people are going to start carving out their own path. And whether that's learning more about health and wellness and treating themselves if they have lost kind of focus and like belief in the system, or you're going to see people who are going to be like, I'm going to learn to fix things myself, or I'm going to go to school and become a plumber, or I'm going to go to school and become an electrician. And people who really want to actively have independence and do something for themselves, and it has to be something that they can also believe in. We will see wars that will happen over ideals and identity. Okay, so the last time we had the Civil War, that this happened. And over the next couple of years, not only do we see Neptune's transit, which mirrors that of the Civil War, but we're going to see like a Uranus return coming up in the United States. I mean, we've got a lot of things that are kind of shaping up that is like a convergence of the Civil War, World War II era, and also things that were kind of happening also in the 60s. So it's going to be a lot of like repetitive kind of themes. The positive is that I think that we can see that finally the medical illusions, since Saturn and Neptune have been in Pisces, are now starting to kind of be unraveled. So what happened with the pandemic? Maybe there's going to be breakthroughs in mental health. Hopefully there's going to be more programs to support veterans who have PTSD. Certainly Saturn and Neptune, I think that's important. Helping the homeless, actively helping the homeless, not just funneling millions of dollars to, our state to pay people to say, well, we're cleaning up the streets, but things aren't really happening. We're not actually seeing that action. Now, we're going to see major revolutions in film and art, and I think we're going to see a lot more independent people making films. We're going to see a lot of new like film companies that are going to be starting up and new studios that are going to be starting up. We might see an integration of like VR kind of reality when it comes to religion or like church services, and obviously collective fights for freedom. And you are going to hear some calls for kind of civil rights uprisings. But I just want to remind you guys that the last time we did that, it did not go well, right? So we had, Americans in the North and Americans in the South fighting each other. And obviously everybody fiercely believed in what they believed in. And it led to a very, very, very bloody war. And there was a lot of lost lives. And at the end of that, ultimately down the road, yes, we did see that there was freedom for African Americans. Yes, we start to see integration between the states. But that took many, many, many years for that to happen. So some of those ingrained beliefs, those ingrained philosophies, they hung around for a while. And it's fair to say still in parts of the United States, you still see that. You can still see that kind of division and separation. So I'm hopeful that this time around, at least with like the Saturn-Neptune transit, with the sextile that we are going to be seeing to Uranus and Gemini, that we're communicating and talking to our, communities. We're connecting with our neighbors. We're not allowing it to manifest as something where it's going to be this blind rage. And perhaps also the sextile that we're going to see to Pluto and Aquarius, we could see that things are getting so crazy in certain parts of the world that we start to go, you know what, instead of just sitting around and watching, I'm actually going to do something, or I'm going to become more self-sufficient, or I'm going to get involved in something that is going to make a difference. The personal effects in general is definitely, I think, like this delusion of the ego, because the sun is exalted in Aries, and the ego boundaries. It'll also bring up heightened intuition and this drive for self-assertion and just feeling like you're knowing that you're in the flow and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Positively, it can create a lot of inspired individuals. It can also be about compassionate leadership. That's not all talk, it's more action. But I do think we're going to see a lot of confusion in identity. I think we're going to see that a lot of individuals are confused and that they're getting angry or they're getting involved in things that they're being misled in. We can see a lot of escapist aggression where people are just flat out angry and they don't know why, and they're carrying that hostility around with them, which we know Neptune can be connected to drugs. It can be connected to frequencies. It can be connected to what they're watching, what they're drinking, what they're eating. It could also mean what's in the air or what's kind of in the collective. And it also, I see Saturn and Neptune as spiritual warfare. I genuinely believe that that's what it is, that you can look at what's going on in the world and you can say, well, there's good and evil. But the reality is it's just kind of like seeing, well, what direction our personal individual is going to actually go in. Are they going to get consumed by the anger and the rage and the hate? Or are they going to lean in the other direction? They're going to go, I'm not going to absorb that. Like, that's not my stuff. It's not that I don't care, but it's like I'm not going to get absorbed in that and perpetuate some of the conflict. I think we can use this transit for visionary goals. And I think that if we kind of ground with reality checks, and that means we're not checking in with our best friends, we're not necessarily checking in with our family, we're not necessarily checking in with people we work with, we're checking in with ourselves, because Aries is inherently selfish. It's the first sign of the zodiac. So it's, what do I believe in? What am I not seeing clearly? And I think a lot of people will really benefit by really exercising a sense of, having the ability to be more discerning, right? Practicing, I think, any way, shape, or form of, having critical thinking skills is an absolute necessity when we have Saturn and Neptune in Aries, because if we don't, we're going to get swept up in all the illusions and the things that are going on. And this could really feel like a really insane kind of like slap in the face with Saturn and Neptune in this sign, because a lot of people are going to suddenly be very emotional, or they're going to be very angry, and they're going to go, why did I not see this before? Why did I not realize this? And it was right in front of my face. Well, because when it's been in Pisces, things have been kind of blurred. So there is this jolt of everybody kind of waking up over like the next month or two. Now, I want to show you guys some of the notable aspects that Neptune is going to be making. And I'm only really going to be taking you up until the time that Neptune is going to be turning retrograde. So I'm only looking at this pocket over about the next like 6 months or so. And I'm sure I'll do another video on it when we have like the conjunctions and the trines and all that stuff. But I do want to talk about some of the bigger energies that are going to be happening. So if you guys are looking for the transits for these aspects, they're down below in the description. You can click that and you can look at it. Also, you guys can find the weekly astro weather aspects that are there as well. Now, tomorrow on the 26th, that is when we're going to see Neptune enter into Aries. Okay, so something that I want you guys to think about, not only other than what we experienced, March through about October of last year, but Neptune's going to be sitting at 0 degrees. Okay, and 0 degrees of any degree is potent because it's the purest, rawest form and energy of that sign. So it means that something is, boom, taking off like a gun, right? That's what Aries energy is. We're striking the match. We're initiating the race. There's something that is suddenly going to what? Blow up, break down, dissolve, and it's going to create this sense of people being like potentially blind with rage. So 0 degree of Aries is the first degree of the zodiac. Saturn's going to be coming into, Aries here pretty soon in February. So we're going to see that also kind of add a little bit of like a different flavor. But Neptune's the first one to kind of reach this degree. So when it goes into Aries, what you need to know is it'll be between 0 and 4 degrees all year long. So look at your chart, once again, see if you have anything within that 0 to 4 degrees of Aries. If you do, then you're going through a Neptune transit, and it can be exceptionally healing, very emotional, very spiritual, very psychic. But it can also be times where individuals are waking up to some of these abilities and they don't know how to handle it. They don't know what it means. And it could be something that is just like very overwhelming for the self. And you can constantly be like, am I crazy? Am I seeing things? I've been seeing a lot of like Pisces risings who've been going through this transit for the last couple of years. And I think it's probably been a lot. I have a lot of sleepyheads that I've been talking to, but also a lot of people who have been really retreating because they're like, it's just too much. Like being around certain people and certain individuals, like it's too much for me because Pisces is like a sponge. So it absorbs everything. So when we see on the 26th that Neptune enters Aries, at this potent 0 degree world axis point, things happen in the world. Very big events when we see stuff. You can look at historical charts of things when wars kicks off or when there's major catastrophes or there's major changes that's kind of going on with the global order, and Neptune's going to sit there. So it amplifies the visibility. And this is going to be really bringing up world events that are going to be gaining spiritual or kind of illusory undertones. And so I think that I would expect, because the Neptune represents the screens, right? Anything we watch. So whether it's on your phone, if it's going to be the news, if it's going to be something that's connected to movies, and I feel like I'm like this close. I'm this close to getting rid of my subscription services because I've noticed this a lot over the last 2 years. I noticed that there will be a big movie that'll come out that has all these stars in it and everything, and you're like, oh, this looks like, okay, great, it's a great cast. And I just recently watched one that I was like, this looks like a great cast, and I got like halfway through the movie and I was like, I can't watch this. It's so obviously predictive programming. And I saw it with Civil War. I saw it with this movie that I just recently watched. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's One War After Another. And it's just so like, it's the same thing over and over. It's really pushing this division in society. It's talking about this kind of like dystopian future where you have like vigilante people who are going out there and they're basically acting as activists and protesters. And like, I don't have a problem with people who want to have, activism groups or people who want to protest. Certainly that's your right. But doing it in a way that's creating division, and it's also creating destruction, and it's like hurting people or destroying buildings or anything that's going to be creating a civil discord, obviously is very like Mars-Pluto themes, right? So the reason why I bring that up is because this is going to be about what people are watching, what they're listening to on the radio, on the news. And they're going to be probably hearing this week that there is some major brewing situation that could potentially be a protest out in the cold, or it could be that, You know, there is this situation that has blown up and, you know, somebody got injured or somebody got killed. And then you're going to see that a lot of people are going to have blind rage. You know, I think that this is the beginning of the global awakening, and it's not pretty when it's in Aries because it usually starts with a spark that ignites like a whole fire. So it's possible that when Neptune is sitting at this degree, there is this collective opening and awareness that's just like, oh, like there is this energy that is pushing us to fight, to have conflict. You know, part of, I think, Saturn and Neptune in Aries is about recognizing, but denying some of those more primal urges, right? Aries is nomadic. It doesn't stay in one place. It wants to pick up a spear. It wants to pick up a gun. It wants to pick up a rock. It wants to fight because it wants to be the first and it needs to survive. And that's a good quality about Aries, is that it literally is survival of the fittest, because if it isn't able to do that and go through the rest of the zodiac signs, then there would not be life. I think what I would be watching for is that there's going to be some stuff that's going to happen, most likely with this Mars-Pluto conjunction this week, that is literally going to spark a very idealistic movement. And something that's like, yes, we can do this, we can do that, and it's not going to be pretty. So be very careful, once again, if you're in crowds. Be very careful if you're going to be around groups of people who are going to be protesting, people who are going to be pushing back, people who are getting angry. Because I do think that there is going to definitely be some conflict. And I mean, call me a conspiracy theorist. I talked about this in my last video, but I was like, guys, energy weapons, vibration, things that can disrupt people or disrupt crowds, right? That's my concern looking at some of these aspects. That people are like, yeah, we're going to go out there and we're going to do this. And then it's like, oh, all of a sudden the crowd is sick. We saw this also, I saw it at Davos this last weekend. They were saying that there was some weird smell that was in the air. And they had to I think evacuate some of the speakers and get them out of there because they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was in the air. Kind of reminds me of that. So it could go both ways. You could see crowd control situations and people who are like, you know, getting tased, or people who are like being arrested, or, you know, who are resisting. And then we could see brutality for sure with Mars and Pluto. But you could also see on the other end of the spectrum that there's just a couple bad apples in a group that is able to rile everybody else up. And then suddenly you've got individuals that are in there and they're like, how did I get involved in this? And it's like chaos. So from January 26th until February 27th, Neptune will sit for about a month at that 0 degree Aries point. So it's very, very potent over the next month. It's going to amplify, I think, world events. I think we're also going to see that this is going to be where we're building towards the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which will happen in mid-February. You know, some people are going to experience situations where they're going to have this religious kind of like shift in their belief system, or they're going to have this spiritual kind of awakening. Other people are going to seem absolutely mad. I think we'll see media frenzies in particular over miracles or deceptions, right? Like, remember, I mean, if you guys are old enough to remember when like that piece of toast went viral all over the world because it had like Jesus on it, and everybody was like, oh my God, you know, like it's a miracle, or like signs and like omens and things like from God. I think you're going to start seeing people who are like, oh my God, I saw Jesus, you know, or people who are having like complete just third eyes that are blowing open and they're becoming very religious or very spiritual. Also, we've seen, and maybe that's part of the positive of like the transits in Pisces the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of people who have turned to spiritual practice, faith-based practice, religious practices. We've seen a lot more people going to church. And I think you're going to see a lot more people individually who are going to be like, I need something to believe in, while others are going to be, you know, leaving certain religious institutions and they're going to be kind of paving their own way for their belief systems. But yeah, watch out for like the miracles, you know, not that I don't believe in them, but I do think that, and I've said this before in the past, like go and look up Project Bluebeam. You know, it's like a government contracted project. There's this discussion about things that they can project into the sky, and, you know, they're going to tell people that, you know, it's the rapture, or they're going to tell people that, you know, it's Judgment Day, or that, you know, the aliens are coming, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be like, I see it, so it must be real. You know, it's like projections in action. And also a lot of manipulation of things that are going to be, continue to be falsely represented in media and on screens. Things that are going to be edited and chopped up that's going to make people mad. Things that are going to be falsely represented when it comes to war even. So there could be falsified events that look like there's some kind of war that's potentially brewing. Now on the 20th of February is when we see the big Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And this is, I could go on and on about this, but I will just say that this only happens every 36 years. And when this conjunction happens, that's also going to be at 0 degrees. So there's going to be something happening around February 20th because the moon's going to be there. And when the moon comes into conjunction with Saturn and Neptune, it's starting to come into a square with Jupiter. So it's going to make everybody feel more emotionally reactive. And Mars is the dispositor, which is coming into a square with Uranus. And it's also going to be reactivating the solar eclipse degree around 28 degrees only a couple days later. So my thought on this is that when Saturn and Neptune conjunct, it's basically saying for humanity, for the world, there is going to be a complete reset. And this reset is being brought on by, well, 22 degrees, government, institutions, top-down structures, companies, business that has some incentive to what? Saturn, Neptune, and the moon. Make people believe they can't own homes, make people believe they're not safe, make people feel like they need to fight or, protect themselves or be combative. It's also going to be a time where I think that people are going to start to realize as Mars is coming into a square with Uranus that there is definitely a lot of instability going on with like the world. And that could be trade, that could be international relations, that could be banking systems. And Aries is this very kind of fend for yourself energy. And with Saturn being there, things are going to get tough for some people. Like we're going to look back at the end of 2026 and we're going to go, yeah, there were some things that definitively changed society and a lot of people had to learn how to do things or fend for themselves. But at the end of the day, once again, survival of the fittest, like if you can learn to do something, for yourself. And I would be saying, try to pick one hobby or try to pick one thing that you can learn how to do yourself, right? So if you're just used to, calling a plumber to come and unclog a drain, right? Go and watch a YouTube video and teach yourself how to do it. That's what I would be doing. Get into learning how to build things or learning how to fix things. Maybe this is about learning about water preservation, or, maybe this is going to be about getting more involved in learning how to, protect yourself from storms. Or maybe this means that you're bringing more structure to learning something that's more Neptunian, music, anything that's connected to art. You really have to look at where it's happening in your chart. But for humanity, when we zoom out, it means there's about to be some events that are going to take place that's going to force all of humanity to become more self-sufficient. Why? Because Mars, which is in the sign of obviously the future and the people and the collective, are pushing for some kind of major change when it comes to resources, when it comes to power, when it comes to food, when it comes to also like our values. So you're going to see a lot of stuff over the next month kick up with planets in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus. That's going to be very much connected to the changings with the banking system and whether or not there is going to be this push to do digital tokenization of assets, if it's going to end up being changes with the stock market and like that digital 24-hour trading that they're talking about, possibly also bringing up a lot of tension when it comes to gas, when it comes to oil. I've been saying for the last several years, I think Saturn-Neptune is going to be a gas and oil war. I think that's what it will be. And you're probably going to see some blockades that are going to be happening, closer to Asia, that's disrupting the trade that's going on between parts of South America or Venezuela, other countries, from being able to get natural resources to China. Okay, I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that you're going to start seeing that this stuff is going to start kicking up, and then it's going to start putting the pressure on the price of certain things. And so Aries is iron, right? It's anything that deals also with gunpowder, ammunition, things that are connected to missiles or self-defense. And there's been this talk about like rare earth minerals and that we need more rare earth minerals. And everybody's talking about gold, and that's great. And people are seeing silver, which is running up, which is doing very well. But not a lot of people are talking about copper, right? Which is Taurus or Venus. And so I think that that's probably going to be like, like the sleeper. I do think I would be going and learning about copper. I was just watching like this billionaire giving this presentation talking about how because of industrial needs that over like the next 30 years, we're going to have to mine more copper than we have like over the last like 1,000 years. And that everything it's needed for infrastructure to also things that are connected to electronics and all that stuff, that copper is going to be very valuable. I do think so. And I think there's going to be other things too. And it's going to incentivize us to start being like, okay, do we have to start thinking about new ways to focus on energy? And like, is there going to be this return to focusing on like fossil fuels or focusing on gas or coal? We may see that. Aries, after all, it is fire. We will see that with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees. Does something have to happen that day? No, it probably will because the moon is there. But this will reverberate throughout history for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We have not had this very conjunction. We've had Saturn and Neptune every 36 years, but we have not had it at 0 degrees of Aries since round about the Bronze Age. It was actually right before 6,000 years, right? Where we went from clubbing animals, living in caves, not having language that was documented, being nomadic, and just trying to survive, to this shift in creating, documentation of language and myth, right? A lot of the reason why I have a job right now. Also, being able to form societies, getting into hunting and gathering, getting into creating, organization to society, expansion of the human brain, development of humanity, moving westward, and then eventually, getting to where now we have people who are all over the world. But it was because of that development in human history. So it was the spark that ignited that. Now, this was also when we first started seeing organization of the first armies. We saw the wheel was developed, so now suddenly we could move and transport goods. We were able to work with iron and metals and create spears and other things that were going to be weapons of war. Welcome back. This time, the rules are totally different. It is going to be totally different, and you are not going to see a lot of these things that are going to be televised, unfortunately. It is going to be something that is going to be a sleeper, because Saturn and Neptune in Aries means that people are going to be like, is something happening? I feel like something is up, but they won't see it. And with the sextiles to Pluto, it could be things that are about digital technology and enslavement, right? Digital IDs, CBDCs, geofencing, cars that don't start because you're, out of carbon credits, that type of shit. And then the sextile to Uranus and Gemini, which is going to be possibly where there's going to be a huge resurgence in communities that are going to be like, we are not doing this. And you will see certain cities, or you'll see certain communities that are going to be full-blown, yes, let's go towards the future, let's do that, that's going to be best for everybody, so we do it, sure, we'll give control. You're going to see other parts of societies that are going to be like, we're not going that way, and if that means we have to live off the grid, or if we have to find, different types of exchanges or ways of being able to trade or barter, or maybe where individuals are really showing up and they're like being good neighbors and they're helping each other, that they can create new communities. But it's about to get super, super real. So, watch with that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. When the sun crosses that degree, when Mercury, when Venus, when Mars cross that degree down the road, you will see echoes of some of the stuff that got kicked off around February the 20th. Now, this is going to be where reality, Saturn and Aries, meets, structures and illusions, or it's going to dissolve barriers. So 1989, right? I was born with Saturn-Neptune conjunction. We saw, it was like around 2 days before I was born, the Berlin Wall came down. My parents bought the newspaper, they always buy a newspaper around the time that we were born. And we could see what happened. And that was like a really big deal, because that was the complete restructuring. The Soviet Union fell, the powers out in Europe were completely reorganized. And then obviously it was a little bit more quiet. And it was the end of the Cold War. Capricorn. Aries is a hot war, right? And it's going to be a hot war, especially when Mars shows up. But I think about how, Saturn comes in and says, okay, I am either a wall, I'm a government, I'm an institution, I'm a leader. And then Neptune's like, nope, we're going to wash that all away. So we can see that there's mass exposure that's going to happen. That's definitely going to put some leaders, I think, in the hot pot and give them a situation where it's like they're going to have to leave, or they're going to vanish, or they're going to have to vacate, or they're going to be removed. While others are going to start showing up, and then they're going to be like, yeah, and they're going to be infusing their beliefs. They're going to be infusing their religious or spiritual kind of values, and like they're going to be using that to lead. And that could go one of two ways, because I could definitely see a lot of dictators, with the Saturn-Neptune stuff setting up. I could see a lot of people who have military backgrounds who are also going to be really solid, good people that I think have the wherewithal and the physical capabilities and have the experience. Saturn does deal with elders. But in the sign of Aries, it doesn't do very well, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's got a lot of courage. It's got a lot of angst. It doesn't have a lot of patience. And so, Capricorn is known with that connection to Saturn as being patient. Aquarius too. So with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, it's like kind of hurry up, let's go. Or people who are going to be like, I've got the solution. But do they? Do they know where they're going? You know, and are we just blindly giving trust to certain people? So we're going to have to really practice discernment. I think that's going to be a big one. I know that we will see government reforms that are going to be happening with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I believe it's just going to be across the board in society at first, and then it's going to be connected to technology, and then it's going to be connected to anything that's going to be dealing with the internet or, you know, kind of movements that are happening. And there's going to be some crackdowns on people who are not protesting peacefully, only because it's potentially, you know, getting some people kind of hurt. I think we'll also see major changes in religion and spirituality, maybe new laws with psychedelics. So we could see certain drugs that are being reclassified, and definitely harsh awakenings from fantasy. Now, it won't be until March the 7th that we see the first planet come into conjunction with Neptune. That's because Mercury is going to retrograde, so it's going to take a little bit. But like the 6th, Venus hits 0 degrees. The 7th, it's going to hit 1 degree. And it's conjuncting Neptune. All right. So think about this, guys. Now Mars is in Pisces. So when Mars goes into Pisces, this is going to be a situation where a lot of the new beginnings that are being sprouted are stemming from the fact that, well, Mercury just went retrograde in Pisces. So there was a complete reworking of international business, commerce, you know, things that were probably slowing down, maybe some issues with weather that was also impacting individuals. Flood events. I mean, you know, certainly Neptune is notorious for there being massive floods that can be very sudden, right? Very quick. Rising temperatures for water. It can also mean that there is going to be some major changes revolving around water. I mean, I've had some concerns for a while about, you know, like water plants and things that are being tainted or being laced with stuff and people getting sick. So you may see that there is going to be some, in some places, you know, boil water orders. Like if you hear that stuff, I would take it very seriously, and I would be making sure that you're getting a good quality source for your water, or you're doing reverse osmosis if you can afford to do that. But Mars now goes into Pisces, where it's basically saying, all right, well, while Saturn and Neptune and Venus are meeting, where there are some illusions when it comes to resources, health, safety, and money, and some limitations, Mars is going through the 12th house. So we could see another pandemic. We could see another pandemic with this happening. And this time around, I feel like it could be global because Mars is in Pisces. It could be something also that there is about to be some information that is released that's connected directly to pharmaceuticals because Mercury is retrograding here. So Venus, Neptune, right? Falsified deception, things that are phony, fake. Getting catfished is pretty common. It could also mean that there is like a sense of people reevaluating their values or where they stand with resources. Obviously, we know Venus isn't happy in Aries, so there could definitely be some people who are acting out selfishly, and then there's some kind of karma because of that. And also where people are starting to feel deceived by something. Well, Venus is connected to Uranus, which is now direct. So people are going to start getting angry when they realize how much fraud has been going on in the world, just in general. How much money banks are making off of, you know, holding your paycheck over the weekend, how much money is being misused in government, how much people are suffering. Certainly Venus, Saturn, and Neptune are suffering because, you know, they don't have what they need and like resources are being held up. And the positive, because there can be a positive, is, you know, Venus, Neptune is known for being very romantic, very creative, very blissed out, but we have a tendency to idealize love. We can also see that this can bring some kind of heartbreaking situation, which can kind of crack us wide open and then help us with some kind of like creative process. Falling for a soulmate illusion, right? Very common with Venus and Neptune. Breakthroughs in art that can be inspired by passion, sure. So I do think that we're going to see a lot of people who are going to be feeling in the world that's like, things are really crazy, I'm feeling very inspired, you know, and Mars going through Pisces could mean people who are filming what's going on with the changes in the world. They're getting involved with nonprofit organizations. They're taking action towards dedicated causes, humanitarian causes. And I believe because of Venus's, you know, kind of position in Aries, and also Mars going through Pisces, and Venus is exalted there, so there's kind of some mutual reception. We're probably going to see a major exposure of fraud that's been connected to the government, particularly connected with women and homelessness. And we're probably also going to see one of these big humanitarian things that some celebrity is trying to run, being like, there is this, horrible world event, send your money. And then, they make off with millions of dollars and nobody actually really gets helped. So if you guys want to help people, get out and do something. Don't just write a check, right? Don't just blindly give resources to people. Like, get involved, like actually physically go and take resources somewhere. Make sure that you really know who you're getting involved in, because I think that this is going to potentially be a big scam event. On the 22nd of March, we're going to see the Sun will conjunct Neptune in Aries. And all I can say about that is that I've been going back and forth with this for the last couple months. And my logical brain says to me, well, the Sun's exalted in Aries. So in a way, it can be strengthened. It can be purified. As it's coming into conjunction with Neptune, which is usually a weakening effect, right? Like we can see that a leader is getting sick, or they're weak, or they disappear. We could also see that there is this movement to organize some kind of peace organization, or an individual is calling for peace, some unifying, kind of message even. It is at an Aries degree, so there can also be this sense of feeling like we suddenly are feeling called to take action. And this is where that spiritual warrior energy kind of taps in. The Sun is also starting to come into a conjunction with Saturn. So I personally believe that even though Neptune and Saturn are not strong in these areas, the Sun is actually going to be able to navigate this pretty well because it's moving through its exalted signs. So Sun conjunct Neptune is about dissolving our ego. This is about spiritual rebirth. This is also about an identity crisis that leads to enlightenment or self-discovery. Or it can be about deceptive self-perceptions. Now, I think this is a time to really practice critical thinking. I think this will be a time where, knowing that Mars is still moving through the 12th house, that there are still some hidden motives or some hidden passions or hidden desires that are kind of driving people to be like, oh, okay, there's this crisis. Let me give you a solution. I think a lot of us know how that went last time, right? I think we're smart enough at this point to be like, yeah, okay, that's the formula, create the conflict or create the issue and then provide the solution. And I think a lot of individuals are going to be like, too faintly familiar to last time. The positive is that it's happening at 1 degree. So individuals will be capable of tapping into that inner voice, especially with Mars at 15, that inner knowing of, should I be just sweeping this under the rug and letting this go? Or is there something here? This is probably going to be a time also where a lot of individuals are kind of tapping in and they're like, shift's about to hit the fan. Things are about to change, and it's going to make a lot of people probably feel like they're losing sleep or feel a little restless, but it's also going to send a lot of people into, I think, a period of reflection and reassessment and kind of checking in with their higher self before they actually take any actions, because things are still not clear. A couple days later, you'll see the Sun conjunct Saturn, which can materialize as, an older leader, kind of making headlines, or some kind of limitation or boundary regarding military home barriers with countries' borders, that kind of stuff. And there's going to be a lot of that stuff. You're going to hear a lot of that stuff. A lot of changes with immigration, a lot of changes, I think, with visas, a lot of changes in regards to nations all over the world that are going to be adopting more of a nationalistic stance. Now, when you hear that in Western media, it's like, oh, you're a white supremacist, you're pro this, you're pro that, you hate anybody who's not white. And that's not what I'm saying. So I want to be very, very clear. Nationalistic stance means that regardless of what country you live in, you realize and you recognize we have to look out for ourselves first. And that's the element of Aries. It's me first, okay? And Saturn and Neptune is, we got to get clear about what we need to do. We need to put out the fire in the house. Then we're going to get out of the house. We're going to assess the situation. And then once we've taken care of this, then we're going to start to figure out how we can save the neighborhood and anything that's around us, right? And that's what this is going to be about. I think you're going to see, and you're seeing it. You're seeing it right now in Japan. You're certainly seeing it in America. You are seeing it in, El Salvador and other, South American and Central American, countries. You're seeing it in New Zealand. I mean, you're seeing it in a lot of places. And it may not be something that is, it almost looks like it's something that's frowned upon right now, because a lot of people are like, no, we should all just be together. But the truth is that Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces has taught us, by not having boundaries, by not having laws, by having lawlessness, has actually created a more confusing, muddled, world. And I think a lot of times people get kind of caught up in, well, we're not integrating well with other cultures, or we're not accepting of other cultures. Well, when you have people who don't speak the same language, when you have people that are coming in that are not integrating because of their cultural differences, their religious differences, there's a lot of contrast. And so there's been a lot of, well, let's merge everybody together. What you will see with Saturn and Neptune going into Aries is it's going to be a lot of leaders that are going to go, that's it, this is the line. We're no longer going to be mixing certain beliefs or certain identities, or we're not going to be bringing in people. We have to take care of who's in our country, and we have to create that barrier so we're not leaking resources. We're not leaking. And a lot of it's going to be connected to what? It's going to be connected to medical systems. How much money is being paid on medical care? And that's why you're going to hear over the next couple of weeks that certain states are going to be like, no. I mean, Gavin Newsom was saying, I think just the other day, I'm proud to say that we offer universal health care. And I'm not saying I'm for or against it. This is a statement he made. And he said that he's proud to be able to offer that because he believes personally that California should be a space that is welcoming people and taking care of them. I would say, okay, charitable perspective. I'm sure that everybody would like to be able to help everybody. But the reality is that the Saturn-Neptune aspects are saying individuals are suffering as a result of shouldering some of the responsibilities for healthcare costs for people who are foreigners. This is literally the astrology. And that's why it's playing out like this. This is the beginning of what you're going to start to see as the quote unquote civil war, because there will be certain states that are going to say, no, we welcome them. I also think about how California is another state, and I lived there for 15, 16 years. So I feel right in saying some of these things because it's just crazy to me. But California is now trying to overturn federal law that will allow 18-wheelers to drive without being able to speak English, being able to transport goods, right? So you've got like vehicles that are like, what, tons. I wouldn't even know what they weigh. I'm sure somebody does, but tons doing 65 on the freeway, and they're getting driver's licenses, but they can't speak English. So if there is a test they have to take, how are they know what's being said or what's going on? They're being issued a driver's license to commute, state to state, putting people's lives at risk. And so there's a reason why they're also saying, well, there's a push now in the United States that if you're American, that you should be able to speak English if you're going to be transporting goods. That's what this is about, right? That's why they're doing this, is because they want to make sure if people are moving, they're moving goods and they're, communicating, that they're doing it safely. So certainly, sure, if you're here, if you're here and you can speak English and you can have a driver's license, by all means, this is why people come to America, to become self-made. That's a very admirable thing. But I don't think that that's what's happening across the board. And so you're going to start to see certain industries are going to begin to crumble, and they're not going to be able to function if they're relying on people who don't have documentation, or people who don't speak English, or people who don't understand what's going on. And then you're also going to start to see the impact that that's going to have on individuals, where there's going to be shortages, they're not going to be able to get things. But the silver lining is that it will inspire certain individuals to go, there's an opportunity, okay? Yeah, there's a shortage of people who are maybe delivering goods in this state. I'm going to go and do that. Or there's a shortage of people who are able to, work construction, or people who are able to do manual labor jobs. I will do that. I'm going to tell you, the people who are going to do the best the next couple of years are people who are willing to do manual labor. We're about to see a complete resurgence of what is, I think, going to be like blue collar workers. And so, people who want to start talking to their kids about what they want to do, trade schools are an excellent option. Talking to your kids about carpentry, about going to school to do automotive work, doing electrician type work, plumbing, contracting, these things. Because if you look at the United States chart, that Saturn-Neptune conjunction is happening at the IC of the United States. What the United States is about to completely do is rebuild all of the infrastructure. They're going to start building. You fly over Texas, you fly over parts of the South now, it's just warehouses, like all of these different, like industrial spaces that now they're starting to build up. Why? Because Saturn and Neptune is going to be inspiring people to be more independent and self-sufficient. In order to do that, they're going to be disrupting global trade, and they're going to be saying, we're not going to be relying so heavily on international companies. We're not going to be pushing to feel like we're buying all of our goods from China. Because ultimately, if you can't do some of these things yourself, then you're actually really kind of in a situation where you're very much, you're weak. right? You're not able to provide for your own. So you will start to see a complete reorganization in not just global order, but global trade, and where certain countries are trading, and if they feel like they're going to be trading, and then they're going to get a little bit more hardcore, probably with tariffs and other things, because they're going to be trying to ensure that they have the funds to take care of the people, but also the funds to be able to start rebuilding what's going on. And I speak from my perspective as an American, but you'll see this in a lot of other countries. Not all of them. Some countries will fall. In particular, Aries is going to be connected to Germany. Germany is talking about carrying out mass deportations. There's a new PM that's coming out talking about that, saying that's the #1 thing she wants to do. Japan's doing the same thing. Very interesting to see women PM, in Japan and also in Germany. That's potentially coming in Germany. And then you're going to see other countries that I think are not going to do well. I think that, Aryan countries, the UK, parts of Europe, they're not going to do well, because you're going to see that there is going to be a segue, and then there's going to be more isolation, and there's going to be a dissolve. If you guys don't believe me, watch what happens the next couple of months. I have a pretty good track record for predicting this stuff. I've been doing political astrology for a long time. I think that, after this point on the 25th, when we're starting to see that Venus-Neptune conjunction, then the stakes get a little bit higher, because this is going to be taking us into what's going to be April 13th, where by then it's almost like the lid's just blowing off. And this is when Mars is going to come into 0 degrees on the 10th-ish. And it'll sit at that 0 degree world axis point. So it's going to be reverberating off of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, right? That happened in in February on the 20th. And then you will see on the 13th, it hits Neptune on the 12th. And then it's going to, it hits Neptune on the 12th and the 13th. At 2 degrees, okay? 2 degrees in astrology is a Taurus degree. So specifically, it deals with wallets, it deals with banking, it deals with anything that is connected to money, it deals with food, land, resources. There we go. So that's an Aries degree. Okay, so Taurus degrees, 2. Money, wallet, because of money, banks, bank employees, bank tellers, the economy, an estate, village, farmers, things that we eat, kitchens, dining rooms, fat, greasy food, nature, forest, meadows, parks, biology, throat, neck, vocal cords, to grow or raise, to have or possess, what is mine. The color green, and people who sing, all right? So Aries, Saturn, and Neptune are people going to be like, I want my money. And it's so funny that it's happening around tax day too, by the way, here in the United States. I'm like, is there going to be some big decision about taxes, or are everybody being told oh, you're going to get the biggest tax refunds ever? And then people are like, where's the money? That could happen. Is it going to be a situation where people are going to get so pissed about what's been happening with the banks that they're going to be like, they're trying to, take money out of, accounts and stuff. And suddenly there's bank runs. I mean, these things could happen. We have never seen this astrology in our life. I cannot reiterate that enough. And with the Mars conjunct Neptune, this is this is undercover military operations, things with submarines, things that can be connected to gas wars, oil wars, some kind of conflict around coastal bases. This is about action that's supposed to be fueled with intuition. And it will create for some people this sense of inspired heroicism, but it's also about blind anger or misguided aggression. You're going to see people who are going to be very bold about sharing their beliefs and their kind of thoughts, and then you're going to see conflicts that are going to arise from people's confused motives. And I do think that because Neptune has this association with Pisces, and we've got the moon coming into conjunction with the North Node, Mercury's there now out of retrograde, the moon's in a dark moon phase, so it's going to be swinging through here. It's going to be probably mass deportations. That's probably what this is going to be. And you're going to see people who are going to be out in arms, being well, I'm protecting my beliefs or my values, and people who are feeling threatened and feeling like they want to fight the good fight. But unfortunately, Mars and Neptune in Aries is handing a shotgun to somebody who's had a 12-pack of beer and being like, here you go. And just trusting that they're going to be, number one, responsible and not be trigger happy. And number two, it's also going to be a situation where it's going to be like, can we trust people with things, right? In general, possessions, or people are going to be fighting over things, or there's going to be conflicts, people scrambling, trying to get gas at gas stations, right? Keep your gas tanks filled up. People having conflicts and fights over, cultural or religious or, kind of spiritual beliefs. And then right after that, you're going to see this start to separate, and then Mars is going to come into conjunction with Saturn. Now, we're really talking about Neptune, but just to kind of paint the picture, Mars, Saturn, Neptune all conjunct like the 19th, 20th, 21st. And the South Node is the connection to Mercury. So you're going to see this all happening at a degree that's about people fighting each other. Why? Because they're angry about what they have been told, or some information is coming out that's about the medical system, where they blindly trusted governments, or they blindly trusted healthcare practitioners or people and the information they told them, and now it's coming out. Go back 2.5 years ago. Go and watch my video where I did the eclipses in Aries, when the North Node went into Aries, and I said, this is what will happen. People are going to follow what they're being told. We're going to start to see a bunch of the collective getting angry and getting mad. We're going to start to see then that when Saturn gets into Aries, and as that period happens from like 2027, 2028, and it starts coming up on where the eclipses were in Chiron, that there would finally be disclosure about how this is impacting men, hormones, reproductive, kind of health, the military, how this was also going to be creating a lot of issues with migraines, headaches, sinuses, inflammation, ears, nose, and throat problems, and that people would be very, very angry when there is disclosure. And so something that you guys need to realize is that what's going to be happening in April is, whether it is medical disclosure about what's happened over the last several years, or the truth about wars, the truth about human history, the truth about what's going on with the banking systems, people are going to be absolutely pissed. And I think that 7-8 degrees, which it's a 7, so it's a Libra degree, so it could be justice, justice for people who have failed to protect. And this is a bold statement, but I think that you will probably see at some point in 2020, probably 2027, could be this year. I think we are going to see some public officials that are going to be held accountable publicly. Like, we may see the return of public executions and hangings. And I'm not saying I'm for that, but I do think that might happen, especially people who have committed treason. So 8 degrees of Aries, I'm rounding up. A large hat with streamers flying. The keyword is excitation. The theme, the winds of change. The symbol speaks to the anticipation and expectation of innocent eagerness and experience of fullness of life. The image of a large hat with streamers flying facing east can easily conjure up a mental picture of a woman. But there is no mention of a woman in the index pertaining to the degree, or even whether the hat is being worn. Eileen Wheeler could have said the hat was hanging on a fence or perched on the head of a sailor in 1925 post-Victorian era. Well, this image came through. The very lack of mention of the hat being worn suggests potentially, for what occasion will it be worn? The wind blowing in the east symbolizes change, and the implication of the image of change being welcomed by new opportunities it brings. The fact that the hat faces into the wind indicates readiness to cooperate and meet the challenge. At its highest, it symbolizes and represents friendliness and innocent love of adventure and new experiences. It's about over-concern with appearance or distinguishedness. The action is on excitement, anticipation of change, and adventure. Now is the time of waiting and watching. Expect the unexpected. Your greatest advantage lies in staying alert in the early signs of indications of change. Be patient and be prepared. An answer or offer will come from the east or someone associated with the east. Winds of change in relation to relationship with the east. I strongly believe that we're about to see the world develop, or I guess separate into 3 entities. I think it's going to be the United States, China, and Russia. And that's nothing to do with politics. I just think that's what's setting up. And this is probably going to be how us, at least in the West, if you're here in the West, are responding to some of the things that are going on in the East. You're going to see stuff going on in the Middle East. as always, you're going to see things that are going to be going on, I think, with China and also Taiwan. And I think this is going to be about how there is a response, a military response, possibly. But this is going to be some wild stuff. I mean, I think that, you know, that Mars-Neptune conjunction with Mercury being there, it's about being like, okay, you know, what is it time to dissolve? Now there's going to be some kind of grand reveal that's going to be happening. And obviously, you know, the Mercury-Neptune conjunction kind of was happening a couple days, you know, prior. You see that around the 16th. This is about more intuitive communication, poetic ideas, maybe deceptive words, visionary speeches, inspiring, but obviously misinformation kind of spreading. So what a time to be alive. We will watch Neptune and Saturn move through Aries all year long. Neptune won't actually turn retrograde until what will be July the 7th, 2026. And if you look, when Neptune turns retrograde, it's going to be at 4, so it's only going to get up to 4 and change this year. And when it turns retrograde, the moon is meeting with Saturn and Neptune, very similar to the ingress, right? Neptune comes in, there's the moon. So you're going to be seeing something that's going to be kind of happening right around those degrees. Moon at 10, the moon's influencing the sun and also Mercury, and Mercury is retrograding. So now we are reevaluating what has been changing for our homelands, our living situation, our families, where people have had to learn to be, I think, like I said, more self-sufficient. Now is a really, really good time to start looking at the area of Aries in your chart, because you're going to have to learn how to do that part of your life different over the next couple of months. And at least we have, you know, full momentum forward, especially all the way until we get to July. But even when we get into July, this is still being influenced by Mars, and Mars is conjunct Uranus, you know? So it's like whatever has taken place, it's going to radically change certain cities, certain states, certain communities. And it's going to be more about where change is happening on the local government level, which will then kind of reverberate out and start to change what's going on, I think, with the relationships that states have to other states, and also like on a federal level, which happened the last time. So we'll see what happens. Thank you guys for listening to my sermon. I appreciate it. But this is, like I said, I cannot stress enough how absolutely historic some of this astrology is. We're going to take this back now to this week. We're going to talk about what's going on January 25th, 2026. Happy Sunday to those of you guys who are watching my Sunday crew. I was laughing. I was reading your guys' comments last week. Somebody was like, I'm the crazy lady listening to you at the grocery store. Actually, at my local grocery store, it was a couple of months ago, I was going shopping, and these two ladies started screaming. They ran up to me and they were like, oh my God, we watched all your videos. And I was like, it's happening. So thanks for taking me with you guys, whether you're running errands or making breakfast, hanging out with your family. If you guys are working out, getting some stuff done, I appreciate it. If you're watching on the 25th and you wake up in the morning, the moon is still in Aries. So you still have time to get that little run in or get some physical activity in this morning. Still relatively close to Chiron, so watch your allergies, be mindful of personal wounds, any issues that are kind of coming up with excess heat and frustration, and where individuals are feeling a little injured as a result of what's going on out in the world, or feeling personally victimized by some collective movements, because it's picking up the energy of Mars, which is very close to Pluto. Now, morning is about taking initiative, all right? So we're like initiative, initiative, initiative. Some people might feel very social early in the morning because Mars is in Aquarius. That's fine. And you're not going to see, oops, sorry guys. Let's take you back. There we go. We're not going to see anything that's really going to be changing too much until the moon goes into Taurus. So it's going to be dipping into Taurus around 1 p.m.-ish. I'm here Central Time in Texas. You might have to adjust your time zone. But when it goes into Taurus, the vibes are different. We go from Martian energy, me, when I'm kind of initiating, to Venus, which is going to be more pleasure, money, food, resources. And Venus is moving through Aquarius, very close to Mercury. Still also pretty combust with the sun. So we see Mercury and Venus, where the mind and heart are kind of conjoined. And that kind of being under the beams of the sun means just we might just feel over inundated with just what's happening socially, what's going on with friends, you know, and maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's kind of just incentivizing people to get out there, kind of connect with others, have some fun. Just be mindful that the moon is going to continue to move through Taurus. It's going to come into a square with Mars around 2 p.m. Central Time. And that'll be like 2 to 4. And then you're going to see the moon start coming into a square with Pluto around the early evening hours, 5, 6 o'clock. Okay, so this is where we're going to start feeling the Mars-Pluto conjunction because the moon is squaring it. And this is not a fun transit. This basically brings up a lot of tension when it comes to the future and the goals and humanity and friends, and kind of feeling like we're being pulled in 2 different directions, where Taurus wants safety and security, Aquarius wants innovation. So we will see later in the evening, we will officially have the first quarter moon square. So that'll happen when the moon hits a 6, and that's going to be happening late at night, but you'll feel that later tonight. And this is the first quarter square. So since the new moon that we had in Capricorn, this is like, okay, crisis in action. What are we going to do about it? And in fixed signs, they don't want to change, right? There is some reluctance to kind of like want to shift and make a shift. So we're going to see that the early morning is pretty chill, and then tension is building when the moon is coming into a clash, basically with Mars and Pluto in the mid-afternoon. The Aquarius stellium is more innovative, and it feels like it's pushing for stability and change at the same time, and something has to give. So it's productive for manifesting, but I do think we're going to see some frustration that's going to be kind of setting up. There isn't any other major, transit that's going to be happening, but just know that this is when you're going to start feeling the Mars-Pluto kind of pressure. And that's really Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, where you're going to see that intensity that's going to be building. So what you want to do to navigate, I think, the astrology on Sunday is just ground your emotions, right? Especially when the moon gets into Taurus. Make sure you eat something, right? Make sure that you're grounding, wear your crystals, go for a walk outside, make sure you have like a hearty breakfast, maybe do some aromatherapy, have some herbal support, do some cooking, gardening if it's not frozen where you live. And you're probably going to see, and I'm just like laughing. I live in Central Texas. So, I've been watching all week, going to the grocery store, just watching people just scrambling to buy all the milk, all the eggs, all the toilet paper. And it's giving me like PTSD, kind of like COVID vibes, and understandably, I understand before I moved here, they had the big ice storm that was kind of out here. So I get it, Texas has its own grid. So when that went down for a couple of days, it was chaos. But we can see in certain communities, because this is going to be about food, sustainability, and security, that there is a lot of conflict over people panic buying things and being like, well, fighting over resources, or people kind of like getting combative because they're needing to get what they need. So watch for that. I do think that just ground yourself. If you go for a walk, if you get some time in nature, and if not, use some aromatherapy to really channel some of the squares. So that way it feels more like determined action without like power struggles, and affirm something. So it's like, I build stability amid some of the shifts that are going on. You guys want to be like Teflon and not feel like you're getting kind of swayed by some of like the collective chaos. All right, so this is going to take us into what's going to be Monday, the 26th. And we wake up in the morning, the moon's still in Taurus. Nothing's really changing. Venus is still here. She's at an 11, so that could definitely indicate some craziness going on socially or on social media. The moon starts with a square to Venus right off the bat, and then it's going to continue moving through Taurus. And then it's not really going to be squaring anything. It starts to kind of subside in that regard, and you'll see that happen. And then the moon's going to make some better aspects on Monday. So it will square Mercury and Venus first thing in the morning. And then it's going to start coming out of the square and start coming into a sextile with Jupiter. So this is definitely pretty stable. Obviously, it's in the PM hours. It's around 6 p.m. But then we start feeling a little bit more emotionally stable, more secure, more expansive. We also saw in the early morning, the moon was in a sextile to Pisces. So it's almost like, man, I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, they want to go out and they want to do things on Sunday, but they're going to feel like there's things that are limiting them or keeping them from doing that. And that could be financial reasons or whatever, weather reasons. But then Monday, things start to kind of calm down. We will also see that this is the day that Neptune enters into Aries. Okay, so now that Neptune's in Aries, it's really highlighting that Mars-Pluto conjunction where I told you guys you are going to see some really, really crazy things that are going to start happening with people collectively. Like Mars in Aquarius is notorious for protests. It's going to be about activists, the whole 9 yards. So, at that cardinal world point, that's going to make the next couple of days particularly interesting.
Nothing else is really happening. You're not going to see anything else happening other than that. And that's a big transit, but I don't think it's going to be super loud because you're not seeing anything that's aspecting Neptune. Now, when Mars, it's been moving through Aquarius, so it's been in a sextile, but now you have air and fire. So the action that's being taken here, the communication, the bringing people together, talking about movements, talking about kind of beliefs, it's going to be waking some people up. It's going to be inspiring some people. I think that could be the positive. But I do think that this is really going to be bringing up for a lot of people, okay, today feels definitely a little bit more stable, obviously expansive and dreamy now that Neptune is in Aries. It's kind of like this ingress is sparking inspiration for a lot of people. But the Taurus moon is seeking comfort, and it's not seeing any aspects in the sky once you're getting into the later day. This is about emotional security because it's sextiling Jupiter in Cancer. And that emotional security coming with some kind of new vision that's also coming in. So to navigate on Monday, this is about maybe embracing intuition, right? And from a Mars-Pluto person myself, something that I have always felt is like, I know when something's up. I have Mars and Pluto in Scorpio, so it's a little different, but they're conjunct. And I have felt, because Pluto's been squaring my Mars and I'm watching Mars come into a square, I'm like, I have certain feelings about things that I'm like, this is not a good idea. Going to this place, doing this thing, taking this risk. I'm like, nope, not a good idea. Nope, I can feel it. And you guys just want to tap into that. Mars, Pluto, because it's connected to the energies of the underworld. It knows how to spot a scam, right? It knows when there's some shady dealings going on, like by the street corner shop. It knows when potentially somebody who's coming over, who's acting like they're in need, could potentially be like dangerous. And I don't say this to scare you, but you will see some of this stuff that's going to start happening. And I think that because Neptune represents in a lot of ways first responders, right? Aries. It could be people who are like, I'm a fireman, I'm a paramedic, I'm a cop, people being like, I'm here to keep the peace, or I'm here to kind of help, or I'm here to help you, and I'm like organizing something. And then we realize, oh my God, like we saw that there was a bunch of people moving in uniforms saying that they were here to kind of help someone. And then we realized it was like a terrorist situation, that people came in wearing things for first responders. And then we see something that gets blown up, and then we can't figure out who it was because they showed up in an ambulance and they look literally like paramedics. You may see some stuff like that. So be careful, be very careful, be very, very, very careful with some of these transits, because I do think there's going to be some stuff that's going to definitely shock the masses. Aquarius deals with like arenas and like massive groups of people. And Neptune is in a sign that deals with physical actions and like athletes or sports. And the sun can be that too. So I think we're also going to be seeing some major backlash with some of the up and coming events and performances and stuff connected to the Super Bowl. I think that could definitely be it, especially because Aquarius is more innovative and things that are different. And it does kind of represent people in society who are unique or things that can be a little bit more fringe. So I think we're going to see some individuals that are going to be kind of speaking out about that. I do think that on the 26th, I would just really be focused on like embracing some of the new ideas that are kind of like coming up for you guys. I think that this could mean that there's new belief systems, new visions. Maybe write down your goals on this day, journal something about your dreams. Use the sextile between, I think, the moon and the north node and also the moon and Jupiter to really nurture yourself. This is about nurturing abundance and like finding a way to bring in more stability or more security with your home or with your family, and definitely meditate on some of the bolder, I think, new beginnings that are going to be coming up. But I don't think we're going to see it quite yet, but it's kind of bubbling up. So the moon's going to keep moving through Taurus. No other major aspects that are going to be happening on Monday. And this is going to take us into Tuesday. And when we wake up on Tuesday, the moon is still in Taurus, just briefly. And now we're starting to watch Mercury and Venus coming into conjunction. So that's going to be interesting to watch because those two are going to merge. Obviously, Uranus coming into conjunction with the moon means that there's going to be some emotional disruption, or there's going to be some shocks or surprises with finances, resources, stability, banking. And I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about the future of what's going on with, like they've been talking a lot about legislation for like cryptocurrencies and trading and things that are connected to, stable coins and all kinds of stuff. And Aquarius is beating down on Uranus and Taurus, and it's still retrograde. So there is some resistance to wanting to change or disrupt the financial ways of doing things, the traditional way of doing things. But you're going to hear more and more calls from people being like, well, yeah, we want, more than just institutional adoption. We want things that are going to be legislation and other things that are going to support, kind of like preserving our resources or our stability or economic freedoms. So I do think we'll hear a lot about that, especially because Mercury and Venus is like people debating and going back and forth about values and how some of these like, kind of currencies or some of these technologies work. I also think that this is going to be a time where, that conjunction to Uranus, there can be some major shakeups, because it's going to be at a 27, and this is right before Uranus goes direct. So it's going to hit here. All right, that's going to be right around 10 a.m. Then it's going to sextile Saturn, so there is a little bit of stability. But right when this is meeting, right, you have mutual reception. You have Venus in a Uranian sign, Uranus in a Venusian sign, and also Mercury and Venus are conjunct. So there's going to be more discussion about like politicians, not just talking about that, talking about budgeting, spending, things that are going to be connecting to healthcare and resources, something there. So watch for that, I would say Tuesday afternoon. And then obviously we're going to see the moon will go into Gemini. God, Tuesday is so crazy. The moon's going to go into Gemini. And when it goes into Gemini, the energy changes, because now it's more about, okay, we had that destabilizing thing happen. Moon in Gemini is like, get the word out, information. What are we talking about? What are we sharing? And it's at a 12. So it's going to be things that are being unveiled, things that have been foggy and confusing about politics, spending, about the future, about things that's going on with the skies, the air, the atmosphere. And we know that Mercury and Venus, even though it sounds good together, like the head and the heart, in Aquarius, it's more like we have to make decisions that are going to be like more, kind of like economically sound, or we have to make decisions that are going to be best for everybody. And like maybe it is forward thinking, but that's what we have to do. The only saving grace that we have on Tuesday is that we see the moon start coming into a trine with Mars. So we can de-escalate, we can communicate, we can share. We also see the moon trining Pluto. So there's a lot of power when it comes to our words and being able to communicate, connect, and get the word out and be able to kind of seek some kind of general understanding and keep an open mind and maybe look past our differences. I mean, Mercury, Venus we might have different languages or different beliefs or different religions or different values, but we all value freedom. And then we also see that the moon is going to sextile Neptune, which is now in Aries. Okay, so the ruler of the moon is in Aquarius. The ruler of Neptune is in Aquarius. I mean, come on, guys. Like, this is crazy. And then Mars conjuncts Pluto. And when Mars is conjuncting Pluto, the moon is going to perfect right around, is it going to be a 3? So Mars-Pluto conjuncts around 5 p.m. on the 27th on Tuesday. Moon comes into a trine at a 3. So it's more of those Gemini things. I know I drive you guys crazy. Where's my book? And we've talked about that degree, the Hindu healer. We don't need to talk about it again. But I do want to remind you of the Gemini degree, because the moon's at a 3, Pluto's at a 3, Mars is at a 3. Things that we write, things that we say, stationery paper, traffic, street, cars, transportation, traffic stops, short trips, crossroads, bus stops, bus drivers, bridges, newspapers, journalists, magazines, newsstands, bookstores, conversation communication, phones, internet, letters, dictaphone, educated people, intellectuals, shops, announcers, radio, TV, corridors, balconies, neighborhoods, personal documents, identity cards, matchmakers, languages, translation, children, kindergarten, elementary school, double to see twins or pairs, and brothers and sisters. I would hope that a lot of you guys are staying aware of what's going on in your communities. You know, And I have a feeling we're going to see another incident that's going to be somehow kind of connected to some person who's crazed that's going into a school or something there where they're going to see some kind of blockages or something of streets because there's somebody who's threatening or too close to like an educational institution or a church, some community event, right? Something like that. And yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But this is not a very pleasant setup, especially with the sun being at 8 degrees. And then Mercury and Venus are also going to be there as well. We can also see some kind of conflict that's involving like a political figure. Obviously, I hope not, but I think that conjunction and how all the numbers are kind of like adding up, it keeps repeating, bringing up some of these Gemini themes. So really this is about transformative intensity, like what you do with that energy. Like if you have Mars and Pluto in your natal chart or you're going through like a Mars-Pluto transit, you know that you are just like fit to be tied. And unless you have something to channel that into, it kind of blows up. So we could be more short-tempered with people. We could have a blown fuse. We could have certainly literal blown fuses, energy issues, shortages, phone line issues. But I would say bring your guys' attention back to the breath. That's what Gemini teaches us. Neptune is saying we don't know what's going on yet. There's almost going to be a situation where there's going to be probably a false flag or some kind of situation that is meant to distract people. Do not get distracted with what's happening on Monday, what's happening on Tuesday, what's happening on Wednesday, because it's kind of hovering around these 3 days. And watch that the power dynamics will surface. But I think the trines and trying to de-escalate and communicating and like asking questions and keeping the peace can help. And definitely the Gemini moon does kind of lighten communication and it does give us the opportunity for breakthroughs. To navigate on Tuesday, this is about really, I think, harnessing the conjunction for deep change. Write something down, right? If it's something that you're afraid of, write it down and burn it. If it's something that you're hoping to manifest because the moon is still, waxing towards the full moon, write down one thing that you have always been afraid to do. Some dream, something you've been afraid to accomplish, write it down, right? Put it somewhere, put it on with a crystal, hold on to it. Because you will probably come back to this and be like, oh my gosh, I was able to overcome this fear. And you guys heard me talk last week about, kind of Pluto transits. It's kind of like, well, what's the worst thing that you could happen, right? You fail, right? It falls apart, you die. I mean, I know that sounds morbid, but like a lot of that kind of like dark humor has kind of gotten me through a lot of things. And I really feel like this is about people needing to kind of wake up and realize that oftentimes the things that we're most afraid of are inevitable, right? At some point, right? We're all afraid of death. We're all afraid of, maybe not all of us, but a lot of people are. When in reality, the ending is only just the beginning. So we're going to see that something is dissolving and it's the beginning of the end. But it's inspiring people to start talking about this excitement that's like, oh, great. So what are the plans for the future? Let's not focus on the crisis. Let's focus on the solution. What can we do to be able to kind of move forward and move through this? I do think that if you can do that and also focus on releasing control to bring about deep change, it's going to be great. And you have to use your words mindfully on Tuesday. This is about communicating honestly to get the details and also avoiding some of the manipulation and the power struggles that can follow. So we're going to have that trine pretty much into the evening. Moon's going to keep going through Gemini. You're not going to see much until Wednesday on the 28th when it starts coming into a square with the north and the south node, which we know is fateful things. And these fateful things involve what? Nines: law, transportation, immigration, travel, college, teachers, philosophers, college professors, major changes that might be coming with education, where the news stations and everybody are covering something involving, a community, a certain city, a school situation or event. And Mercury and Venus are still in conjunction. Now they're at a 13, so it's an Aries degree. So this is where individuals are kind of being like, no, now we're going to get involved in this, or, we want to have a say in what's kind of happening. So we still have that merger of the heart and the mind. Now the moon's going to keep moving through Gemini, not making too many aspects. The last thing you're going to see is it's going to start coming into a sextile with Chiron pretty much overnight. So for the most part, Wednesday is quiet. But we do see that Mercury-Venus conjunction that's happening actually at 13 degrees. So it's going to go to 14, but it starts at 13. So that's also an Aries degree. Aquarius 13, barometer, keyword is indication. The theme is forecasting. The symbol speaks to the prophetic insight and to the anticipation of an experience. The image of a barometer refers to measurement or forecasting and reflection of change. As such, it alludes to a man's desire to know what contingencies he needs to prepare for or what skills or knowledge will be required to deal effectively with what is coming, situations, and events. The implication of this degree is the ability to predict the future is dependent on understanding the basic order of patterning of the universe, and that the signs are there for those who have eyes to see. At its highest, the symbol represents keen observation, uncommon analytical skills, and vision, superior judgment. Watch for lack of self-confidence or a tendency to avoid struggle by retreating and laying low with every change of event in the hope that things will soon blow over. The accent is on forecasting or trying to determine what to prepare for. You may be unusually concerned over some future possibility and how you're going to handle it. Your greatest advantage lies in gathering information and analyzing in terms of how it best fits patterns you're familiar with. If you can't find the answers you're looking for, consult with an expert. Guard against being afraid to make a move without knowing what to expect. These are times that require a leap of faith. Stepping stones are forecast, prophecy, omen, hairbringer, potent sign, forewarning, illusion, hint, reference, index, evidence, measure, indication, and meaning. So this is probably going to be economic experts. Mercury could be somebody who divines or forecasts, but they deal with like facts and figures. Venus is going to be about evaluating resources, giving insights to what future resources are going to be valuable, what's going to happen with the economy, what's going to happen with jobs, how AI is going to be impacting certain jobs or certain positions, how that will be impacting banking. Yeah, and I think that this is going to be interesting because, like, look, you're going to see when Neptune goes into Aries, you're going to see a lot more people who are going to be like, it's the end times are near, you know, and you're going to see people who are going to be out protesting and talking about their beliefs, and that's fine. But I think that this is interesting because there will be some people who are going to be like, do you not see what's in this, like the stars, you know? And it's weird because the people who are into this stuff, they know, like they understand the bare minimum of what the planets mean and what the aspects mean, what the degrees mean. And there are going to be people who are going to be like these little mini, like Paul Revere's, who are going to be like, this is coming. And whether it's going to be with the banking system or with politics, they're going to start telling people. Now, on the other hand, you're going to see all like the kind of fringe, like QAnon and like all those other people who are going to be like, this is what we've been waiting for. This is the Great Reset. And I would just say, take everything that you hear with a grain of salt, because whatever people think is coming and people get really excited about, oh, the reset or like, you know, the revolution, like, I think in retrospect, a lot of people think that sounds like a good idea. And obviously I know that the cleanse is kind of needed, or the purge. But this may very well mean that like major aspects of our society will be completely disrupted. I would love to see, myself included, I would be out of a job essentially, right? I mean, to some extent I would be. But if we were to potentially be living in a society where that means there is no internet, there is no connection, there is no texting, there's no phones, right? What are you going to do? I mean, we have survived before for sure, but what are you going to do when you realize that the only way of actually really being able to do anything means that you have to go out and socialize, you have to focus on community, you have to build friendships. I think that's going to be a lot harder for a lot of people than they think, especially when we have a lot of people who really don't have the skills maybe to really truly be self-sufficient or really contribute in a way. And I'm not saying everybody, but we're going to see people who would not know what to do, right? So careful what you guys wish for. I think that, you know, Mercury conjunct Venus is probably going to be some very interesting forecasting, I would assume. This is also going to be a day where there is a lot of social and intellectual harmony, because you are seeing that the moon is trining Mercury and Venus. So if you're somebody who's like, I need to send out a newsletter, or I need to make an announcement, or I'm going to launch a website or whatever, great day to do it. Schedule your meetings, schedule your travel, send your invitations, you know, do all of that stuff. Try to do it if you can, actually on the 28th, before the moon starts coming into a square with Saturn on Thursday. So what you want to do on Wednesday is you really just want to watch, because ideas, I think, will really sparkle. I think that's the great thing. And I think that early in the day, some of the nodal squares are prompting a little bit of a tweak of how we communicate. And then to navigate on Wednesday, network, meet with people, connect, brainstorm, right? Align your words with your values. Maybe release outdated habits because they're going to promote some sense of growth. All right, so then we're going to move forward. We're going to take this into Thursday. And we wake up in the morning with the moon in the sign of Gemini still. Now it's coming into a square with Saturn. You'll see that kind of midday, still picking up the energy of Mercury, who's moving side by side with Venus. So there is like this collective group think that's kind of revving up still. Remember, Mercury is still connected to the South Node. So it's going to be a lot of people talking about some changes coming with like the job market or with health or things that are connected to services. And the moon is not really aspecting anything. A slight sextile to Chiron, that's pretty much it. And then it'll be right before it goes into Cancer, it will square Saturn. So you're going to see the moon square Saturn here. So that's going to be around 2 p.m. Central. And then the moon's going to break into Cancer, and it's in its home sign. So not really seeing too much. There will be a moon square Neptune. So there can be some mixed emotions, some mixed feelings about some stuff, but at least it's not picking up the energy of all of that Aquarius, although it will in conjunct or quincunx here for a couple of days. So this basically means that there's nothing major, but some of the lunar squares, like the moon square Saturn, is like emotional rigidness, confusion, feeling locked. How do we communicate and connect? Moon coming into a square with Neptune, confusion, feeling more sensitive, and obviously blurring our boundaries. And yeah, Neptune is still infused with this Mars energy, so there's still a lot of confusion here. On Thursday, to navigate this day, I would say set your limits and set up your schedule early. Focus on getting as much work done as you can, and then as the moon is kind of ingressing into Cancer in the early evening, that's when you're shifting more to being like, now I'm home, now I am nurturing something, you know, I'm avoiding escapism, I'm focusing on creature comforts, emotional security, and probably feeling like things are calming down now that Mars and Pluto are starting to kind of separate. Great day to connect with loved ones, maybe expand through empathy and emotional connection. Wonderful for getting some domestic stuff done at home or practicing a little bit of like gratitude work because the moon is going to be moving towards a connection with Jupiter. So pretty quiet day. And then this is going to take us into Friday, which will be the 30th. And you're going to see the moon and the North Node trine on the 30th, which is a nice aspect. Feeling very much in flow and harmonizing emotionally, tapping into our intuition, tapping into also like emotional healing. That could be one way of looking at it. Moon has been in conjunct Pluto and Mars. Now it's coming into conjunction with the sun. So it's a lot of what emotional patterns or habits do we have to fall back on when the world feels like things are intense? Or how are we checking in with our family? Or how are we checking in with ourselves? I think for the most part with the moon, you know, going through a trine to the North Node early in the morning, it's setting the stage for more feeling checked in intuitively and like emotional abundance kind of flowing because it's going to move towards Jupiter. So it is really great for anything family related, anything that's going to be connected to your intuition. And you'll see the moon start coming into a conjunction with Jupiter, and that's going to be in the evening hours around 17 degrees here. So 7, 8, 9, 10 Central Time is when you're going to see this. Wonderful for family get-togethers, gatherings, you know, anything that's going to be connected to just feeling safe and secure. Once again, still keeping the themes that we saw on Thursday of connecting with loved ones and kind of expanding. Also, anything that's going to be connected to your intuition, maybe reflecting on what has kind of changed with your home or your living situation, reassessing your emotions and your feelings, I think is going to be a big one. And you will see that the moon, as it's crossing Jupiter overnight and into tomorrow morning, will start coming into a square with Chiron. So it can be like where a lot of us are having to heal identity issues within our family or our home or our living situation. So let's see, anything else? Not really too much going on Friday. So let's take this into Saturday. And then first thing in the morning, very early, the moon's going to square Chiron. So that is bringing up some emotional wounding. Chiron's now direct in regards to our identity versus where we live. And like, I do think that whatever events transpire over the next week, there's going to be a lot of people being like, Am I proud to live where I live? Or am I proud to be identified or connected with a certain belief system or a certain identity? And like some people are going to be like rejecting or going against or speaking out against like their family values, out against, their country of origin. Like there's going to be something like that's going to happen. And this is at 22. So it is dealing with whatever actions are being taken by like leaders or like military and people having kind of mixed feelings about that. I could see that. And the moon has also been in conjunct all of this Aquarius. So there's some people who are like, nope, I don't want to get out and talk about it. And other people who are going to be like angry, being like, how could you stay home when this is going on in the world? So you're going to see a lot of polarizing views. On the 31st, the moon and Chiron square very early in the morning. And then things are actually pretty quiet. Then you're going to start to see the moon coming into a trine with Saturn later in the day. And it'll pick up that trine to Saturn here around 2, 3, 4 p.m. Central Time. And this is where there's some like emotional kind of stabilization going on. And remember, Cancer is more like retreating, thinking about things, feeling our way into it. It's kind of like the womb. And then Leo is more like, oh, something is born. So what you are going to feel very strongly is when the moon goes into Leo. So in the afternoon hours, it's sextiling Uranus. So we're feeling like kind of like we're emotionally recovering from some of the shakeups earlier in the week. Now we're practicing a little bit more emotional restraint as it trines Saturn. And then the moon's going to go into Leo. So it's going to go into a solar sign. And this will be happening on Saturday night. Well, remember the sun now is connected to obviously, the moon. And we're building into what will be a full moon on Sunday. So as the sun is sitting in Aquarius, its opposite sign, the identity is not so much on the individual, it's on the collective thoughts, the collective movements, the future, right? The internet, technology, community, humanitarian stuff. Very, very close still to Venus, where there's a lot of discussion about, changes with relationships, changes with money, changes with values. And Mercury is lighting that on fire too. So it's going to be like a total media frenzy revolving around, how we are maybe not going about things the best way when it comes to being more innovative and being more inclusive. And that, there are some people who are just really angry and they're feeling like they need to get out there and they need to cause a ruckus. So the positive is that in the evening hours of Saturday, the moon's in Leo and it trines Neptune. Great date night, especially if you're doing this like around 7 p.m. You're going to catch it right before the moon opposes Pluto. So it could be great to go out, see live music, go to a bar, go to a restaurant, go dancing, have good music, have fun. People are going to be feeling very creative, very inspired. And then as the evening goes on, you will start to see the moon oppose Pluto, but it's not going to oppose Pluto until like midnight. So if you're like, hey, I want to go and do something 6 to like 10 o'clock, I'd be like, go and do it on Saturday. Saturday is definitely a great day to do that. You can do it on Sunday too, but some of these aspects are nice as long as you're home by midnight, right? Like Cinderella. Because around midnight, the moon is going to oppose Pluto. And remember, Mars and Pluto were conjunct at 3. So whatever issues were going on out in the world or kind of collectively, now they're kind of coming back up and you can find yourself in a situation where you're having some kind of like, ego-based kind of debate about the world and what you think, what somebody else thinks. And then there's obviously some kind of conflict and some heated words. So be careful if you're staying up late on Saturday night. I could see some bar fights with those aspects. Leo deals with bars. Neptune deals with alcohol too. So I think that on Saturday, there's no major aspects. All right. So moon's coming into opposition to Pluto and Aquarius, trining Neptune, but that's in the middle of the night. So earlier in the day, it does kind of seem like we're healing wounds very early because the moon's coming out of its square with Chiron. Then it's about structured emotions as we start seeing it come into a trine with Saturn and Pisces. And then the Leo moon ingress is bringing drama and creativity. So I think actually on Saturday, address vulnerabilities early in the day and do so gently. We want to have fun. We want to create. We want to play. We want to shine. We want to kind of tap into our inner kind of child and creative and romantic. If you happen to be up and about and doing things during the opposition, just realize that, the opposition can be good for empowered release where you have a moment to kind of stand up for what you believe in, but not everybody is going to agree with you. And it can definitely create some angry kind of mob mentality. So watch your words. This will take us into Sunday. So now it's February 1st. And when we wake up in the morning, we are coming into these full moon energies. Sunday morning is going to kick the door in. You're going to see the moon that's now starting to come into an opposition with Mars, where this is a lot of that social activity. And then the moon is just kind of like getting creative and getting excited or focusing on play. And it can be a little feisty with the moon in opposition to Mars. It can also mean that there's just a lot going on socially and we have to get things together. We have to be creative. We have to show up. We have to bring the kids. And it's at a 7. So it's definitely a lot of like drama that can be happening in relationships, or a lot of how we are, or our ego is responding to changes that's kind of happening with our friends or online. So that's the first aspect you're going to see before the moon makes an opposition to the sun, which is going to be the full moon at a 13. So the full moon's not going to happen until the later hours. So this has to hit 13. Okay, so it's going to be around 5 o'clock-ish, I think 5:09 p.m. Central Time. And this is at an Aries degree. Okay, so one of my favorite full moons is the Leo full moon, because it really teaches us that we have to wholeheartedly embody the polarity of planets in 2 different axes. And so a full moon is the sun illuminating onto the moon. So it's shining, oh, okay, we're going to see the creators, the performers, we're going to see the lovers, the romantics, we're going to see the stars, the celebrities. But it's also echoing back the sun, which is conjunct Venus, which is conjunct Mercury, which is still close to Mars and Pluto. So this is about how the collective is reacting and responding to something going on in the world that deals with a leader, or something that deals with a celebrity. So we're going to probably be hearing some big buzz. Well, throughout the week, you know, like we just had Mars conjunct Pluto. We had also the sun recently that conjunct Pluto. Is there going to be, you know, some big major, you know, transition for leaders? Is there going to be a celebrity that passes? Is there somebody that steps down, you know, and are they honoring somebody in that capacity? That could happen. But I like that it's kind of referencing and it's going back and forth. And this is about just the quickening of events at a 13 and the highlighted emotions that we see with the Leo full moon, where everybody kind of goes roar. So the full moon is like this culmination of self-expression, and the oppositions are highlighting ego versus collective tensions. And so where sometimes the group mentality, especially with Pluto and Aquarius, I call this like the star killer, you know, because, you know, Leo wants to have the center stage and it's all about me and it's the king, and Aquarius is like, fuck that, like it's going to be what everybody wants, you know. So a lot of people will push back against some of this celebrity culture. A lot of it, actually, you'll see a lot of that kind of happen, especially when the South Node goes into Leo later this year. So I do think that to navigate Sunday is just watch for the drama. You're going to see some of it. You're going to see that for some it's about romantic endeavors, creative launches, creative advancements. It's also about balancing the heart with innovation. So we have to release what's dimming the light. And maybe it's just me. I got South Node in Aquarius, South Node in the 11th house. So it's like an Aquarius energy, and I have the North Node in Aquarius in the 5th house. And so I've always kind of had this weird kind of relationship with the 11th and the 5th house, where I'm like, I'll see a lot of planets go through there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of like ahead of the curve. Like I'm talking about things before people start to realize it. And then when I see oppositions kind of happening there, I see a lot of like haters in the comments section, you know, or I see a lot of people who are like against it, which is fine. I'm used to it at this point. But you're going to see this. Leo is very much what you love, what you enjoy, what you're proud of. And then you're going to see all these haters this week that are coming through the opposite house, where Mars, Pluto, the Sun, and Venus is like, yeah, wear your evil eyes, kids. There's going to be some people who are not going to want to celebrate certain people's victories, or they're not going to want to champion the fact that people are actually showing up and they're doing the right thing or making the best decision that's actually going to be for the collective. They're also you're going to have some people who are going to be like, well, that's not fair. You have to share the spotlight, or you have to give something away. And like, it's going to be hard to please everybody. After the full moon, the moon will start coming into an opposition with Venus. And that's that longing. It's at a 19. That's that overnight, that longing for something. Like, I want more of it. And then it'll also oppose Mercury. And that's going to be kind of heading into, obviously, Monday of next week. So have fun on I would have to say probably the night to go out and do something is going to be when you first see the moon go into Leo and start coming into a trine with Neptune. So when did I say that was? Saturday night? Yeah, Saturday night. And then Sunday gets a little dramatic. But for some of you guys, if you have natal planets around 12, 13, 14 degrees of Leo, it's going to be like definitely something big. So watch what's kind of going on in your chart. All right, we're going to talk about Neptune and Aries. I know I've done it before, but there are a lot of new people on the channel. So thank you guys for watching my content. I appreciate it. I'm a Western astrologer. I practice whole sign astrology. So I'm going to be looking at this from the perspective of whole signs. And I think it actually really works, especially since we're looking at Neptune being at 0 degrees. So in my private practice and when I look at charts and I work with clients, I always use Placidus. So if you're a Placidus user, no worries. Just go and figure out where 0 degrees of Aries is in your chart. You may have to listen to more than one rising sign to get the full scope of what's going on. But I'm going to talk about Neptune going into Aries, what's kind of being kicked off, what's being initiated for you, what you want to be kind of watching for. Do listen to your rising sign to get an idea of exactly which house the planets are moving through. A lot of people have been asking me this lately. Listen to your rising sign. If you don't know that, go to astro.com, put your date of birth information in there at the time, calculate your chart, look at the 9 o'clock hour, that's your ascendant. This is going to tell you in zodiacal order where the planets are moving. So you want to see what house Neptune is in. You can listen to your sun sign. It's going to be more connecting to your energy, your vitality, your ego, maybe your career. So it will impact you in some way. And your moon sign as well on an emotional level. So all of them will give you some really valuable information. But if you want to know what's likely to happen, listen to your rising sign. All right, we're going to start with Aries and Aries rising. If you guys are the first ones, and welcome back. Pisces is like, take Neptune, you can have it. Although Pisces isn't done with it, but you guys are getting Neptune back. So once again, as a reminder, 0 to 5 degrees of Aries placements. You're under a Neptune transit this year. You're also going to be going through a Saturn transit, and we'll be talking about that soon. But Neptune in your chart rules the 12th house, okay? And Neptune is transiting the first house. So something I always think about is that each sign, right, like it almost benefits, like it does better because it's able to make up for some of the qualities of the sign that came before it. So in your case, Neptune, you know, being the ruler of the 12th house, now it's going into your first, and you have to kind of go, okay, what are all the things that I allowed to kind of self-sabotage? Oversleeping, over drinking, hiding out, isolating. You know, it can also mean that there is this major change and transformation of your self-identity because now you're integrating who you've been working on emotionally or spiritually, and now it's coming into visible form, right? It's being born. It's rising through you on the ascendant. So this is about, on one hand, some of you guys are going to be super intuitive, very psychic. You're going to feel very sensitive. You really got to be on the up and up with your salt baths, clearing your auric field. You got to be grounding. You got to be moving your body and working some of this kind of fog out. Because it can also blur how you see yourself. So like I've seen some people going through the Saturn transit, the Neptune transit on their ascendant, and they have like body dysmorphia, right? And they don't realize that they look totally normal, but they have this over-fixation with being insecure or wanting to hide certain parts of themselves and not seeing themselves clearly. Neptune can distort things. So it can mean that there is some kind of distortion in how you're seeing yourself. It can also mean that this is about this kind of like spiritual self-discovery that you're going through. So I predict for Aries and Aries risings, particularly the first 5 degrees, that this is about an identity shift and a merger of who you are spiritually and who you are physically, and now they're becoming one. So this is like an inspired like reinvention of yourself, and there can be potential confusion. You have to watch anything that deals with water, with alcohol, with medications, with addictions, with hospitals, with isolation. But I think that what you will find is with Saturn coming into your sign and conjuncting in this next month, it's stabilizing your self-image. It's making you realize you are the captain of your own ship. This is about embracing independence. This is about embracing authenticity and finally avoiding some of the escapist behaviors that you have been tapping into. Aries, I know you can do it. You've got it. Let me know what happens with this transit. It's a big one. Taurus and Taurus risings. What's going on, Taurus? Neptune's going back into Aries. Not a bad transit for you guys, to be honest with you. I do feel like for a lot of you guys, both the Saturn and the Neptune transit is going to be a little bit more subtle, and I think it's going to be well received. Now, obviously, you're going to see Neptune going into your 12th house, which deals with foreign lands, spirituality, past lives, isolation, your intuition, things happening behind the scenes, and Neptune rules your 11th house. So it can mean that you're about to go through a complete kind of transformation where you might be feeling like you might need more time away. I'm also thinking about how Mars is connected to Neptune and Mars is conjuncting Pluto. So there is just this very powerful energy where it's like so much is changing with you, with your career. There's so much pressure there that you might just feel like you really have to be better about your downtime and your sleep and just kind of retreating and having some kind of practice that you're doing like meditation or spirituality or working out in private to help you transmute some of that energy. Deep spiritual retreats, dissolving your social illusions, intuitive dreams, hidden healing opportunities, but there is seclusion risks. Now, Saturn's going to come into conjunction with Neptune, and this is about being, I think, more so disciplined with your meditation. I would be doing hot yoga. I would be doing Tai Chi. I would be doing any kind of combination of spiritual movement and fitness or heat or being in the sun. I think it would be really helpful for you guys. And I think that if you seek solitude wisely throughout this transit, you will not feel so drained and you will feel more capable of being able to connect compassionately with your community. Good luck, Taurus. All right, we have got my Geminis and Gemini risings. What's up, Gems? Neptune's going back into Aries in your 11th house of friends, allies, networks, goals, and community. Playing pretty friendly with you, especially if you're like a 0 to 5 degree Gemini rising, it'll sextile. So not hitting you too bad. You are going to see that Neptune rules your 10th house of career or anything that deals with your reputation, your status out in the world. And as it moves into your 11th house, it's taking up the themes of, idealistic networks, new fever dreams, right? New connections socially, new groups that you might be starting, new companies that you might be working for, making new friends at work. It could also mean that you are joining new fitness groups. That could be something else that could happen. And you're very ambitious. So I predict for my Gemini and Gemini risings, visionary groups are going to start to form for you. Your career kind of like illusions start to dissolve and you figure out what your purpose is and who or what you're supposed to be working with. And if Saturn is coming in next month, it's going to structure a lot of your alliances where if you've been trying to grow your business, you'll be able to network. If you're trying to find a job, you're going to join a community that's going to help you get set up or teach you how to run your own thing. I think I would just recommend vetting your friends. Some of your friends can act a little crazy. It may also mean that there can be a sense of having to kind of clear out certain friends and you're bringing new people in and you're really aligning your goals with a new sense of intuition and spiritual fire. Good luck, Gemini. We've got Cancer and Cancer risings. What's up, Cancer? Ooh, for the cardinal signs. If you have anything 0 to 5 degrees of Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising, you are under a Neptune square. The 10th house position is coming down on you. It's beaming down on you. It's a closing square. So it's basically putting more pressure on you to show up in the world. And as I've said in my other videos, you don't have to have it all figured out yet. You just have to try your best. You just have to start. One foot in front of the other. Saturn's going to teach you that too. So as Neptune is coming into your 10th house, which deals with your career, your reputation, your public image, how people see you, and Neptune rules your 9th house, which is about your beliefs. So your beliefs about your purpose, your beliefs about your status, your beliefs about your career, where education, learning, traveling, philosophy, publishing is all now going to start to kind of influence what you're doing work-wise. I could see a lot of Cancer and Cancer risings that are going to start doing coaching. I could definitely see that, where there is some kind of coaching that's going to go on. I could see a lot of you guys that are going to start writing books. You're going to start publishing things. You're going to start your own business if you're completing programs and degrees and stuff as well. But I think that this is about finding a spiritual vocation. And so it's not unusual when Neptune goes into the 10th house, you get involved in spiritual healing practices, or you get involved in mental health kind of clinics, or you start doing something that's connected to psychology or hospitals. Those things can kind of happen. It's also about idealistic philosophies when it comes to who you are out in the world. So I predict that there can be some very dreamy reputation shifts But you're going to realize, especially in the spring, you're going to have to work a lot harder for your dream job than you guys are aware of, but I think you're going to be able to do it. Maybe travel is somehow factoring into some career changes. And when Saturn shows up over the next month, this is about professional boundaries, knowing who you want to work with, who you're going to service, what you're going to offer. Maybe there's a merger. Maybe there's a big change in your relationship status as Saturn is connected to your 7th. But I think that this is really about pursuing what feels like soul-aligned work and questioning outdated dogmas and beliefs. Good luck, Cancer. Things can feel a little confusing while it's squaring things, so just be patient because there can be a sense of doubting what your kind of path is. Definitely a good time to talk to like an astrologer or a career counselor if you guys are feeling lost. Leo and Leo rising, you guys are going to do Neptune and Aries in your natal 9th house, fellow sister fire sign. So if you're 0 to 5 degrees of Leo, this is trining you, you're going to like it. Neptune obviously moving through the 9th house, so it is moving through a house that deals with higher education, legal matters, your philosophy, your belief systems, mentors, gurus, and Neptune is tied to your 8th house, which deals with other people's money, joint resources, debt, taxes, partners' money. So I think a lot of this is about like transcendent philosophies, mystical intimacy, like learning more about yoga or maybe tantra. Could mean that some of you guys are traveling for deep soul healing. Maybe you're wanting to do some learning when it comes to meditation, hypnosis, or healing, or kind of working with alchemy. I also think that this is about spiritual journeys and that some of you guys might experience some kind of blurred boundaries in joint finances or investments or potentially in partnerships. But when Saturn shows up, it's going to give you this unwavering sense of grounded faith. And I would be saying this is about exploring other belief systems, exploring other options when it comes to ways to make money or places that you can travel, and really protecting some of your guys' emotional investments. Good luck. Virgo and Virgo rising, you guys are doing Neptune moving into your 8th house in Aries. Obviously in a sign that inconjuncts or quincunx is used, so some of the changes that are coming are subtle, but then they're going to hit all at once, okay? So the 8th house is a house that is it's kind of shadowy. So it can be dealing with fear, trauma, repressed pain, things that are hidden or things that are more taboo. Sexual nature, it's also about investments, partnerships with money. It can be connected to health insurance, life insurance, car insurance. It can also be dealing with inheritance. And Neptune is moving into this house, so there's a lot of questions about this stuff, right? And so I think that on one hand, because Neptune rules your 7th, and it's going to be the 7th of partnerships going into the 8th, there is this dissolving of partnerships. So some Virgo and Virgo risings are dissolving partnerships, and it's going to be impacting their money and what they share or what a partner is giving them. While others are saying, actually, no, we are merging our money together. We are bringing our resources together. We are investing together. Maybe we're taking on a loan or getting a mortgage. It could also mean that there is just a complete restructuring of how you guys are handling debt or saving money. So think of it as like a spiritual merger. It can also mean you're working with a therapist, you're working with a counselor, you're working with an astrologer. You do have to be kind of cautious with joint banking, okay? And know where money is kind of coming or going, because at first Neptune, you don't really have an idea of what's happening there. And it can mean that you're changing something about your job or your work, and that's also impacting your benefits or your insurance or your resources. Some of you guys may be going into business that's going to be more kind of focused on health or tech or potentially even, insurance related matters. That's possible. And this can bring idealized bonds with partners, but also deep healing. Just watch out for financial deception. And I think when Saturn shows up and it comes into conjunction with Neptune, because Saturn is karma, right? And karma, in my philosophy, is neither good nor bad. It's just the laws of the universe. So when Saturn comes into conjunction, it means some kind of karma revolving children, health and job, and merger of resources is going to be fulfilled. So some Virgo risings are now having children that's the spiritual bond, right? And that comes with more emotional and also financial kind of implications, but that could be the merger. While others are saying, actually, the relationship's dissolving and now the karma is, I need the support of a partner and like now we have to find a way to work this out. So it's going to be different depending on everybody's chart, but I do think if you set trust boundaries and you embrace vulnerability, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. Good luck, Virgo. That's definitely one of the rising signs that I'm seeing a lot of variety in terms of those transits. All right, Libra and Libra risings. You guys are going to be having Neptune going into the sign of Aries, your opposite sign. So if you happen to be a Libra, sun, moon, or rising, 0 to 5 degrees, pay attention. You're going to be under a Neptune opposition this year. And particularly with the early degree signs, you're going to feel this the most. Saturn's going to be going through there as well. So it's fair to say that the cardinal signs are all really getting tested over the next couple months. Big time, especially 0 to 5 degrees. Well, 7th house is other people, okay? Therapists, astrologers, spouses. It could be business partners. It's your marketplace. It's anything to do with what you offer and what services you give people. And Neptune rules your 6th house, which is going to be about pets and services, health, work, and habits. So as the 6th house ruler goes into the 7th house, you can see that there is some sense of service or servitude that involves a relationship or a partner, right? So it can mean that you're working with a new partner or a business partner. You're maybe working out with a partner. Maybe it means that you're going to couples therapy. It could also mean that there is a sense of kind of carrying, the load or the responsibility of work or care together. So it's really helpful to focus on health matters with partners if you're in a committed relationship. On the other hand, it can mean that it's not just about these compassionate routines, it's also about creating more romance and inspiration and feeling like personal fulfillment within relationships. But the problem is that usually when Neptune is sitting on your descendant or it's in opposition to your sun, you can't see people very well. You can't see them very clearly. And sometimes your perception of them is, oh, they're distant, they're not available, they're crazy, they're absent, they're ghosting, they're drinking, they're drugging. And then also, the 7th house is a mirror. So sometimes like Libra risings especially have a tendency to like project back to what their partner is showing them because that's what the energy of Libra is. So your partner might be kind of distant, be kind of, controlled and reluctant. And you're like, well, what's wrong? Why aren't they there? But I would say, Libra, take a look at you. What are you doing? Are you avoiding certain aspects of the relationship and doing things together? Watch out, take off the rose-colored glasses. You guys have to be willing to kind of see that there can be major illusions in relationships. Masks can come off. And I think that, especially at the 0 degree point, those of you guys who are single might feel like in the next month or two when Saturn shows up, you're ready to get into a relationship or you're ready to move or you're ready to move in with somebody or you're ready to, call it quits in a relationship. The next couple months will be make or break for Libra risings who are in relationships. If you're single, I would just say be mindful of the people that you're starting to get to know. And when Saturn comes into conjunction, obviously with Neptune, this is going to be about being like, okay, is this going to be a stable commitment? And if so, what are we actually doing together? Saturn rules your home and children. So a lot of you guys will take relationships to the next level by moving in with each other, relocating, having kids, and also just trying to find ways to kind of better connect and focus on your relationship. But it can be draining having Saturn and also Neptune in opposition to your early degree placements too. So there's a need to have better boundaries with people, maybe infusing daily life with creativity. That's the other way that I could kind of look at that and like trying to do more creative work so that way there isn't as much focus on what's going on with like relationship distance if those things are happening. Good luck, Libra. Scorpio risings. Neptune is returning back into Aries in your natal 6th house, and you're kind of in the same boat as Virgo. Some of these changes come on very quickly, Aries, and you don't see them coming. Okay, so that's kind of the problem with the inconjunct and the quincunx. Good news is that it's Mars energy. So you are familiar because you're also a sign that's ruled by Mars. And the 6th house deals explicitly with health and work on the surface. But it's also about people undermining you. It's about accidents. It's about your habits. It's about your office space. It's about your coworkers. It's about your pets. And it's also about your habits And the problem is that Neptune coming into your 6th house, you're not always going to be self-aware, right, Aries, of some of your habits. So Neptune's tied to your 5th house, which is about creativity, romance, self-expression, hobbies, children. And as it goes into your 6th house, I think it's really important for a lot of Scorpio and Scorpio risings to be like, okay, I need to focus on some aspect of service. Neptune and Saturn will require you to do that, but it might also mean that part of your service is something in artistic health or healing practices. Maybe you're getting into, working in intuitive fields. Maybe, creative flows are kind of happening, but you're not managing your boundaries or your schedule very well. So you can have like major burnout. Also, Neptune is hard to diagnose when you have Neptune going through your 6th house. Like I'm a Libra rising. I'm just graduating from this, 12, 13 years ago when Neptune went into my 6th house is when I started my business, right? And I started being like, okay, I'm working in the business of giving readings. And so now I feel like at this point, at the end of the transit, I'm like, I can see where it's been very, very beneficial for me in some ways. And then in other ways, I'm like, haven't had the best boundaries. It has overtaken part of my schedule. It has positively affected my habits. I can say after about 12 or 13 years, I don't drink very often and I don't drug. I don't really do that stuff. So it's definitely cleaned up my habits because I had to kind of purify that to do the work that I was doing. For you, I think that this is about making sure that you're making sacrifices and you're willing to say, hey, you know what, I can't step away from work because I do need hobbies or things that are creative. Or maybe it's the time that you're willing to dedicate to your children, your pets, or a purpose. When Saturn shows up next month, I think for a lot of you guys, you might find that this is probably going to be about disciplined wellness, right? And that's so much of, I think, Saturn and Neptune and Aries is like I said, learning to kind of control some of those kind of like lower, like instinctual kind of like animalistic vibes. That's like, okay, I must do this. And Scorpios can be very intense, kind of passionate people. You're fixed. So what is it that needs to change? We'll look at Mars. Mars is going to be ruling this, and Mars is conjunct Pluto, and it's going to be in your 3rd house. Scorpio, you must transform the way that you navigate things at home. You must transform how you communicate with your family. You must transform something about your emotions. Something that may be coming up where you're having illnesses, problems with your sinuses, inflammation, problems with your ears, your head, allergies, because there are repressed emotions that are going on because you're dissatisfied with a parent, with a living situation, with a family situation, or you're stressed. Let this process, because a lot of I think Neptune, transits can teach us that when we go through something where we're feeling like we're just a victim of a situation, it will bring us to our knees and it teaches us how we need to actually be humble and practice gratitude and also realize that there is a lesson in this and that through this we actually realize that, hey, I can't carry this with me anymore. Pluto will do that too. Pluto will bring you to your knees, but it's not going to be as gentle as Neptune. But because you happen to be ruled by Mars and Pluto in their meeting, I think there's something very toxic about Scorpios and the way that they are carrying emotions and they're not dealing with it. And it will manifest as health issues. I hope not. I'm a Scorpio. But I think that that's the case. And then when Saturn shows up, it's going to bring this sobering reality. And it's going to make you realize that the way you're communicating, the way you're thinking, the way you're talking on your day-to-day is not actually inspiring you to get the show on the road and have healthier habits. And so Saturn will humble you in a way where it's going to be like, you have to be better about cleaning, you have to be better about organizing, you have to be better about sacrifice and care when it comes to home and family. This also means a lot of you guys are going to start working out at home, getting serious about your health, and you're going to be really full steam ahead, even if you're not working, having a routine. And part of that means you have to move your body. So Scorpio, focused on holistic habits, focus on channeling some of this kind of passion and intensity in a more productive, organized way, come up with a schedule and stick to it. And you're going to find that at the end of the Saturn and eventually the Neptune transit, you're going to be a very different person. Good luck. Went through that, was not fun, came out the other side, didn't die. It'll be fine. All right, Sag and Sag rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Neptune going into the sign of Aries, which I do think you guys are going to like. If you happen to be 0 to 5 degrees of Sag or Sag rising, this will be trining you. So it's going to be feeling inspiring, creative, romantic, And yes, you got to go through the Saturn stuff, but I think it's going to be a lot easier than having these two stinkers in Pisces. Sag, the fifth house is the house of creativity. This is where things are born, right? Whether it's businesses, hobbies, children, romantic relationships, self-expression, creativity. It's a very like, look at me type of energy. And so some of you guys might be really tapping into your inner child, your inner artist. I think some of you guys might also be really feeling inspired to take risks and really focus on making some kind of home or family dream a reality. Now, Neptune rules your fourth house, so it can mean that it's influencing your fifth house by kind of saying, okay, maybe it is that the dream is to have a craft room, right? Maybe it is to have a dress-up closet. Maybe it is to create an amazing entertainment space for friends. And part of that creativity is going to be you taking it on and you going, I'm going to build it, I'm going to paint it, I'm going to design it, I'm going to create it. For others, it could be self-employment, their own business. It could also mean that part of what is kind of shaping up is when Saturn shows up, either moving or traveling or romantic relationships with people who might be culturally different or foreign. It could mean that you are learning more about, the markets and trading or investing. It could also mean that there's just this dreamy self-expression and it's coming from your spiritual roots and you're feeling inspired because of where you're moving or where you're traveling or where you live. A lot of the home, I think, illusions will start to dissolve and Saturn's going to show up and it's going to go into your fifth house. And so this is the karma basically of learning how to have structured fun. And that might mean being a parent. That might mean you taking an art class, taking a dance class. That might mean that it's just really about creating from the heart and really nurturing family bonds and doing it mindfully. I think like with Jupiter, that's going to be going into your ninth house soon, trining your ascendants or your sun or your moon, Saturn and Neptune going through the fifth house. A lot of you guys are going to get really serious about love, really serious about a craft or a project. And also those of you guys who have kids, it's going to be about the relationship with children and or also if you're going to have more of them. So I think that I would get the show on the road with being creative. You're going to have to be a little bit more discerning with romantic relationships, I think, especially people from the past, because the fourth house is the past. And sometimes when Saturn goes through the fifth house, a romantic partner from the past comes back. So there can be a sense of being like, could we do this again? Is it a good idea? You'll have to kind of feel that out through the spring. But I do think that you guys are going to be a lot more protective of your heart because there is like a lot of heart healing that is going to be kind of going on with Neptune through there. Good luck. Capricorn risings. Get ready, guys. You guys, I would say Capricorn risings and Aries risings. Woo! If you have anything 0 to 5 degrees of Capricorn, sun, moon, or rising, you're going to be under a Neptune square. And Saturn will also be coming into conjunction with Neptune next month, your chart rulers. So the next 4 months is kind of like the Thunderdome. Get a helmet. Now, the fourth house is the roots of the chart, right? The womb of the natal chart. So it's private, it's hidden. I always tell people, because I have Saturn and Neptune here, I'm always like, you don't see like the behind the scenes stuff. Like you don't see that. And this means that over, the next several years, but explicitly this year with Saturn and Neptune there, it is blending the energy of your third house with your fourth house. So as you see Neptune coming into the fourth, it wants to really focus on dissolving old family dynamics, particularly with parents, particularly with siblings. It could be with like aunts, uncles, cousins, or neighbors. This is also going to be saying that it has something to do with changing the way that you communicate your emotions or how you communicate with your community. Now there can be mystical, magical family dynamics where you're living in a foreign land, especially when Saturn shows up. But I've seen this materialize more as people becoming more intuitive about where they want to live, how they want to live, how they want to move through the world. It can bring about emotional healings. It can also bring some kind of inspiration, through siblings. Some of you guys, when Saturn shows up, it's going to be about getting really stabilized and feeling like you're grounded in a particular location that you're living. While others are going to go, this is the end of the road. I don't want to live in this country anymore. I don't want to live in this house anymore. Or, hey, I have to go back home, or I'm taking care of parents. Maybe it means that you're wanting to live in a more rural area. You want to be more self-sufficient, off the grid. You want to build your own home. You want to live out in the middle of nowhere. It's also, I think, a really good time to think about healing ancestral patterns, you know, and whether it's relationships you have with your parents or with your siblings. This is also about learning to speak compassionately. You know, I think about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction and how prominent that is for you. And you don't realize this yet, but you're building a whole new life, Capricorn. And when that happens, Mars is the dispositor and it's in your second house. So there is some incentive to make money because you are seeking freedom. And freedom for you is going to be more what you're building within your home zone. So a very, very big time for you. I think Neptune makes us a little unsure. And then Saturn's going to come in and it's going to basically kind of be pushing us, you know, to the brink, being like, nope, we're going to go up this mountain. This is exactly what we're going to do. It's going to be a lot, but it's going to be an adventure and like chop chop. So you'll be able to do that. There can maybe be some people in the family doubting some of the moves that you're making and the changes that you're making, but I feel like you're going to be feeling very confident to go and hit reset. And I think it's going to be really good for you and you're going to feel very fulfilled. So don't be afraid about some of the stuff that's going to be kind of going on, and be mindful of your emotions and your intuition in the process. Good luck. Aquarius risings. You guys are going to have Neptune going into Aries in your natal third house. Pretty friendly for you guys. It's also going to be kind of sextiling Pluto in your sign. It's also sextiling Uranus as it's getting into Gemini. So, I mean, you've got enough stuff going on with Pluto, so I don't think you guys are going to be worried too much about Saturn and Neptune. Although Saturn is your traditional ruler, so you'll feel the effects of it. Neptune is going into your third house. So this is going to be about how you communicate, how you learn, websites, media, siblings, cars, anything connected with the mind and how you kind of express yourself is pretty much the third house. And what you'll find is that with Neptune, your second house ruler of money and resources, going into the third, it's not a bad transit. I mean, I think that this is really helping you guys find your voice. I think a lot of you guys are going to feel like, you know what, that's it. I have something to say, you know, and I've seen this from all of my Aquarius risings that are like, you know, I'm just fit to be tied with this and that and what's going on in the world and we need this and we need that. I'm like, great, go and write a book, you know, go and start a podcast, go and start a YouTube channel, do something with that energy, because otherwise you can like verbally destroy somebody's will to live. I think that, you know, this is going to be for a lot of you guys, maybe poetic thoughts, learning divination, being more creative, realizing your spiritual worth, maybe making money in a way that deals with spirituality or writing or media, visionary ideas, and you're going to be dealing with value illusions. So a lot of you guys are going to be like, do I value this? Do I not? You got to be really careful if you're buying gadgets, buying phones, buying cars, signing leases, because there could be some very big financial kind of pitfalls if you're not looking at the details. And you have to understand Saturn, your chart ruler, is going to meet with Neptune, which means you have to clarify rather than just signing things and rushing through the details exactly what these contracts potentially mean. Now I'm going to double down on that because you also have Mars, the ruler, going through your sign, and you want all this change and you want it now. Mars, Pluto, Sun, Mercury, Venus. And then as these two are meeting in February, Mars will be in your first house still, coming towards the eclipse degree, which means a lot of you guys are going to go, I'm impulsively buying a car, signing a lease, I'm moving, you know, I'm going to start traveling, I'm going to start learning. And I hope that you're able to put it into things where you feel like you have an outlet and you can express yourself, because otherwise you're going to be kind of demanding and you're not going to realize how you're coming across to people. And I say this lovingly because I've seen enough Aquarius risings going through this where I understand Pluto's going through your chart right now, but, you know, Aries is snappy. And Neptune in the third house, you don't realize that your tone or how you're coming across to people can be kind of intense. And then when Saturn shows up, we want to refine that. And even though there is a sense of wanting to do something now, Saturn is going to reward you if you're pacing yourself and you're taking your time. And if you're not rushing through things or putting your foot in your mouth, which some of you guys will do. So I do think that it's going to be more about slowing the pace, being mindful of your words, practical learning when Saturn shows up. You guys need to get into a walking routine. You guys have a lot of steam to blow off. Maybe be walking, listening to motivational speakers, listening to podcasts, listening to astrology stuff. I don't care what you guys listen to, but you have to move, and you also have to be really breathing and moving with some of the change, because your mind is moving faster than a lot of where other people are going right now, right? And it's even far ahead, literally, of your body. So your body's trying to keep up with all of the change energetically and vibrationally that your mind is kind of calling forth and saying this is what needs to happen. So you have to also stabilize the body. I do think that this is about also just journaling your dreams and just really reassessing any financial moves intuitively. Good luck. And for my Pisces and Pisces risings, you guys, you do not get a pass yet. Not yet. Obviously, Jupiter is your traditional ruler, and I know that, but Neptune is your modern day ruler. So even though Saturn and Neptune are leaving Pisces, they are both heading into a new sign. So you're going to feel the effects of Neptune going into Aries, and then you're really going to feel the effects in February where Saturn conjuncts this. So here's what I think. I think because Neptune rules, obviously, you know, your first house of self, and it's going into the second house of values and possessions, you are dissolving materialism. Okay, go and pick up Marie Kondo. It's like less is more. I want to travel lightly. I don't need things. I don't need anything. I'm not attached to anything. This is also about transforming your spiritual identity and your values. This is about attracting more intuitive abundance. It's also about self-illusions fading. So not identifying with, I am as much, money as I have in a bank account, or I am successful because I wear brand names, or I am this. You're not going to want to be attached to that stuff. And you're going to find that this is going to be where some of the self-illusions start to shift and they kind of fade away. And then also you become kind of fever dreams with all of these new ways that you can reinvent yourself, your style, how you make money, what you do for work, what your goals are. And you'll see this when Saturn comes in. Saturn's actually going to conjunct Neptune. It's going to strengthen you because Saturn represents your networks and your goals. And it's also your 12th house of what you have already been thinking about or kind of planning. I think a lot of this is about just really grounding out your values. And because Mars is going to be in Aquarius when this conjunction happens, you're recognizing I have to release in order to receive. I have to let it all go. So you may not be a Pisces or a Pisces rising that's totally freaked out about changes with the financial system or worried about lack mindset. I mean, a lot of you guys are very, very lucky and things can just show up and they can manifest for you very quickly. And you'll see that especially in February through April where you're going to work your tails off. You're going to work very hard for what you have, but you're going to be like, I did that. That was me. I did it myself and I made my own way. And you're going to feel very fulfilled. So I think that for a lot of you guys, this is just really about trusting that inner guidance. This is about building secure resources. This is about knowing who you are and trusting the process and welcoming maybe a little bit of a tightening of the purse strings, but you're going to gain a lot more in the long term after this. So good luck, Pisces. I hope it's a good one for you guys. I definitely feel like a lot of this is letting go of that like lack or scarcity mindset. I think it's really important for you guys, especially to be meditating and doing rituals on cord cutting, burning, releasing, letting all of that go, because you guys are going to be able to save yourselves. All right, guys. Well, that was quite the Sunday service, but like I said, we are dealing with some rather unusual astrology. It's never boring at my job. I hope that you guys like this video. That was the astro weather for the week. Obviously, Neptune in Aries over the next month at that 0-degree point is really ushering in a very fiery new chapter. Try to lean into the inspiration, but keep in mind that it's not until Saturn conjuncts in a couple weeks that we start to really step forward and build something new. Stay grounded, practice, like I said, that sense of really being aware, having kind of critical thinking skills. And if this resonated for you, please do give me a thumbs up, like this video, subscribe for more of my videos. I'm here Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Definitely leave me comments in the comment section. Come back and let me know how this resonated for you guys at the end of the week. And I will see you back here on Tuesday. So until next time, stay cosmic and enjoy. Take care.